The Human Realm. The Human Realm, by Liu Jiming, translated by Chen. Part 1, continued. Chapter 14. When he was small, county and commune cadres spent a considerable part of each year immersed in the countryside. Now everything had been turned upside down. After parting with Bu Xiaoli, Ma La drove his farm vehicle toward Guo Dongsheng's house. Guo Dongsheng's home was beside a canal between the old street and new street, less than 200 meters from the distillery. The house was a recently built 3-story building. The facade wall was tiled with colored mosaic. On sunny days when sunlight hit it, it gleamed brilliantly, quite imposing. The first time Ma La visited Guo Dongsheng's home, he was awed by this grandeur. He found it hard to connect this beautiful building with Guo Dongsheng's identity as village party secretary. That time he expressed his surprise without concealment. But Guo Dongsheng said village party secretaries like him who'd built houses in town and lived there numbered several in Heikou. Nowadays there's a popular jingle among ordinary people. City cadres live in the provincial capital, county cadres live in the city, town cadres live in the county seat, Guo Dongsheng said self-mockingly. For village cadres like us who don't even count as sesame officials, isn't living in town perfectly natural? Looking at this Shenhuangzhou village party secretary's righteous expression, Ma La was speechless. He remembered that when he was small, county and commune cadres spent a considerable part of each year immersed in the countryside. Now, everything had been turned upside down. Guo Dongsheng had gone to the town government for a meeting and hadn't returned yet. Only his wife was home. Regarding Ma La's arrival, Guo Dongsheng's wife only greeted him coldly. Although it was lunchtime, she didn't even offer the courtesy of asking, "Have you eaten?" She casually brought him a chair, then went upstairs herself. Although Ma La and Guo Dongsheng had once been intimate childhood friends, he wasn't familiar with this wife of his. He only knew she was called Zhang Yulan, a plump, fair-skinned woman who before marriage had been women's director of a neighboring village. When Guo Dongsheng married, Ma La had already resigned from Heikou Middle School and gone into business with teacher Liu. The couple were quite blessed. They had a son and daughter. Their son served in the military and had returned last year to work at Chufeng Group, Yanhei County's largest enterprise. Their daughter had been admitted to university 2 years ago. Just the celebration banquet had dozens of tables. Town leaders and cadres from neighboring villages all came. Just from this, one could see that Guo Dongsheng was quite an extraordinary figure in Heikou. When he first returned to Shenhuangzhou, Ma La had been puzzled that Big Bowl Uncle refused to live in his son's spacious building and preferred to live alone in that dilapidated guard shack on the embankment. Only later did he learn the real reason was that Big Bowl Uncle and his daughter-in-law had never gotten along. As for why they didn't get along, he couldn't figure it out. Supposedly, when the granddaughter entered university and they held the banquet, Guo Dongsheng repeatedly invited Big Bowl Uncle, but the stubborn old man refused to go, making Guo Dongsheng lose face, unable to hold his head up in front of others. Ma La sat alone in the empty living room and opened the newspaper he'd brought, reading it by himself. Very quickly, he became absorbed in the newspaper's content, to the point where he didn't even notice when Guo Dongsheng returned on his motorcycle. While parking his motorcycle, Guo Dongsheng greeted him. "Where's Yulan? Why didn't she make you something to eat?" "Oh, I already ate on the street." Ma La shifted his gaze from the newspaper and sized up the travel-worn Guo Dongsheng. "If you hadn't come back soon, I would have left." Guo Dongsheng pulled over a chair and sat down opposite Ma La, pulling a cigarette from his shirt pocket, sticking it in his mouth, lighting it himself, and taking a deep drag. "You never visit without reason. What do you want? Just say it." Ma La said, "Nothing really, just wanted to chat with you." Guo Dongsheng said, "Oh," with some surprise. He raised his eyelids and glanced at Ma La. "I heard you've been very busy. How do you have this free time today?" "No matter how busy I am, I'm not as busy as you. Besides village affairs, you also have to manage your own family matters." "Are you praising or criticizing me?" Guo Dongsheng said with a half-smile. "Such a torrential rain. The village crops must be badly flooded. I've been in meetings all morning and haven't had time to go to the village to check the disaster situation. I really haven't seen you return to Shenhuangzhou for quite a while, Ma La said. Big Bull Uncle says ever since you settled in town, going back to the village is like visiting relatives. My dad's being sarcastic, Guo Dongsheng said dismissively. My dad's always opposed me building a house in town. He still thinks that as village party secretary, I should work in the fields like before. His thinking is still stuck in the past. Ma La detected a trace of mockery in his words and imperceptibly furrowed his brow. But Guo Dongsheng didn't notice his expression and continued defending himself against Ma La's earlier remark. Actually, I've long wanted to quit this village party secretary position. This job has no benefits and only offends people. These years, folks farming don't make money to begin with. After paying grain taxes and fees, they can barely fill their bellies. But that's how the world is now. Can you blame me? This wasn't the first time Ma La had heard these complaints from Guo Dongsheng, but he didn't want to immediately interrupt. Toward this childhood friend, he always harbored brotherly feelings. Although he'd been away from Shenhuangzhou so many years, time had erected a thick barrier between them. Many of Guo Dongsheng's words and actions now felt strange to him. He felt somewhat confused about this and wanted to find an opportunity to chat properly with Guo Dongsheng, but he'd never found the right chance. The country is about to abolish agricultural taxes, Ma La suddenly said. Your work as village party secretary should become easier after that, right? Guo Dongsheng looked at him with surprise all over his face. I only heard this news at this morning's meeting. How did you know? Ha ha, this hardly counts as news anymore. Ma La casually picked up the newspaper he'd just been reading and said matter-of-factly, as soon as the 16th Party Congress concluded, newspapers began discussing the 3 rural issues at great length. First and foremost is abolishing agricultural taxes. Hearing Ma La's words, Guo Dongsheng suddenly realized that the person before him was no ordinary farmer. When discussing national affairs, he was no match for him, just like back when they were in the same class. Every exam, he'd be far ahead in the class, leaving himself far behind. Not to mention that he'd been admitted to Yanhe County Teachers College, later went into business, and accomplished such a spectacular career. Of course, he eventually stumbled and spent so many years in prison, but whether standing or lying down, he'd once been someone not to be underestimated in Shenhuangzhou. No, in Heku and even Yanhe County. True, currently, Ma La had contracted Shenhuangzhou's outer beach and was nominally a villager under his jurisdiction, but nobody believed he'd scratch out a living from the dirt his whole life. Ma La, like his deceased brother Ma Ke, was destined not to be a mediocre. Just as his father had said many years ago, these 2 brothers do everything differently from others. Whether dying or living, everything's spectacular. Every time his father mentioned the Ma brothers, he used this admiring tone, making Guo Dongsheng feel he had no face. This made his attitude toward Ma La always contradictory. Ma La's rise and fall seemed incomprehensible to him. Ma La's every move since returning to Shenhuangzhou was equally unfathomable. When Ma La proposed contracting the wasteland on the outer beach, he naturally provided help within his capacity, but that was merely within the scope of his authority as village party secretary. In his heart, he was actually full of various wariness and doubts. Like treating an uninvited guest, he was always carefully on guard, as if Ma La might at any moment do something jaw-dropping. At this moment, Guo Dongsheng's wife, Zhang Yulan, hearing their voices, came down from upstairs. She wore a pink, floral-patterned nightgown, shuffling in slippers. She wore 2 jade bracelets on her wrists and 2 huge jade earrings on her ears. When she moved, the earrings swayed on her plump earlobes, quite the style of a wealthy lady. Go upstairs and get that box of pu'er tea our son brought back last time. Make Lazi a cup. Guo Dongsheng crossed his legs and ordered in the tone of the household head. Ma La had long known that Guo Dongsheng was usually quite afraid of his wife at home. Big matters and small were all decided by his wife. Big Bull Uncle's discord with his daughter-in-law had much to do with this. Seeing Guo Dongsheng now putting on airs in front of his wife for his benefit, he secretly found it somewhat amusing. He'd wanted to say drinking plain boiled water was fine, but after hesitating, he didn't speak. Zhang Yulan rolled her eyes at Guo Dongsheng. She seemed about to flare up, but glancing at Ma La, she still restrained herself and very reluctantly turned to go back upstairs. After Zhang Yulan brought the tea, Guo Dongsheng naturally changed the subject. That kiwi orchard on the outer beach. It should bear fruit this year, right? Ma La said, Soon. I heard from my dad that you also planted strawberries. That's precious stuff, not easy to tend, Guo Dongsheng said casually, his tone somewhat like when he visited villagers back in Shenhuangzhou. Planting it as an experiment. What did they call this before? Right, experimental fields. Ma La habitually chose his words carefully, as if lecturing in a classroom, saying thoughtfully, Nowadays, farming is practically built up with pesticides and chemical fertilizers. The soil quality is different from before, too. Experimental fields? Hearing this long-absent term, Guo Dongsheng nearly laughed. What era are you talking about? Try it now. Without pesticides and fertilizers, can crop yields keep up? He asked rhetorically, as if grasping some truth, and without waiting for Ma La to answer, waved his hand and said in an indisputable tone, If it were like that, even fewer people would be willing to farm. That's the reasoning, but the grain produced is not only unpalatable and nutritionally poor, but it can also even harm people's health. Guo Dongsheng heard that Ma La didn't agree with his viewpoint, but he didn't want to continue arguing. He really had no interest in this topic and couldn't say much about it. More than no interest. As long as he heard things related to farm work, he felt irritated. Ever since moving his family to town, he'd also subcontracted his few mu of land to Zhao Guangfu. His son worked in the county seat. His daughter attended university in the provincial capital. Aside from household registration still being in the village, he and his wife now ate and lived in town. Sometimes he really felt he had little connection to Shenhuangzhou anymore. Of course, he was still the village party secretary, but now that the country was even exempting grain taxes and fees, this party secretary position had become even more of an empty title. But that was fine. He had plenty to worry about now. His daughter would graduate soon. Finding work would depend on him as her father. He'd also invested in opening a furniture factory in town. Every few days there were always miscellaneous matters to handle. Just these things alone kept him too busy. Where would he find time to worry about how to farm? Besides, he'd never been skilled at farming since childhood. Back when he was working on the production team, he couldn't even earn full work points. It was precisely because of this that he begged his father, Guo Dawan, to get him into the brigade sideline cooperative to learn carpentry. Yet at this moment, Ma La was seriously discussing the 3 rural issues with him. Wasn't this like a donkey's lips not matching a horse's mouth? Guo Dongsheng lit another cigarette. Several butts already lay at his feet. He smoked 2 packs a day. His teeth had turned black from smoke. Zhang Yulan had quarreled with him many times over smoking, but while he could yield to his wife on other matters, he never compromised on smoking. Regarding Guo Dongsheng's silence, Ma La quickly understood. He realized his ideas were somewhat impractical. Obviously, what he and Guo Dongsheng were thinking about were completely different things. This village party secretary before him ate and lived in town. Villagers found it difficult even to see him once. How much energy did he ordinarily have to worry about Shenhuangzhou's affairs? Ma La couldn't hide his disappointed mood. For quite a while, he couldn't muster the interest to speak. His original intention to have a good talk with Guo Dongsheng deflated all at once, as if someone had poured a basin of water over his head. Guo Dongsheng detected the downcast expression on Ma La's face. Probably not wanting him to feel deliberately slighted, he put on a smiling face. You're someone who's seen the big world. Shenhuangzhou is smaller than a palm, not enough space for you to flex your muscles. His words sounded both like praise and teasing. I know you have your own way of doing things. Whatever difficulties you have, just speak up. He patted his chest. As long as I'm still this party secretary, I'll definitely help if I can. Others who come to me I might not care about, but I absolutely must help you. Who told us we're friends who wore split pants together? Faced with Guo Dongsheng's somewhat exaggerated declaration, Ma La felt somewhat confused, even uneasy, as if he'd forced the other to do something he was unwilling to do. Dongsheng, if only you hadn't moved to town and still lived in Shenhuangzhou, he murmured. Now in the village, forget young people, even people our age are scarce. Usually it's hard to find someone to talk to. This seemingly casual remark from Ma La stirred something in Guo Dongsheng's heart. That's easy to solve. Come to my house when you have time. As long as I'm home, I'll definitely keep you company talking, he said jovially. I'm just afraid my tongue is clumsy and I can't out-talk you. Even as kids, your mouth was nimbler than mine. From Guo Dongsheng's exaggerated laughter, Ma La detected a hint of insincerity. Stay for dinner tonight at my place. We brothers will have a few good drinks. One could tell Guo Dongsheng meant this sincerely, but Ma La didn't have this inclination. I should be getting back. Guo Dongsheng had no choice but to also stand and see Ma La to the door. At the entrance, he suddenly remembered something and said, I almost forgot. When you go back, pass a message to Zhao Guangfu. His youngest daughter, Manyue, is bringing her boyfriend home for the Dragon Boat Festival, so he should prepare well. After saying this, he added, Manyue and Guo Qiang both work at Chufeng Group. Guo Qiang was Guo Dongsheng's son. Do you know who Zhao Guangfu's son-in-law is? Guo Dongsheng shouted after Ma La's back, still not finished. He had to stop and turn his face. Not knowing how to answer, the other party smiled mysteriously and deliberately left him in suspense. You'll know when the time comes. You might even know him. Who is Zhao Guangfu's son-in-law? What does that have to do with me? Ma La thought as he walked, feeling Guo Dongsheng's suspense was completely without basis. Ma La drove his farm vehicle from Guo Dongsheng's entrance onto the flat canal road. Not far away, the distillery's chimney emitted thick smoke, like a huge broom smearing the sky in a mess. The distillery discharged wastewater from its vats directly into the canal, turning the water black and thick like soy sauce and emitting a strong stench. The entire Heku was permeated with this unpleasant smell. This canal was called the Guangming Canal. It had been excavated over 30 years ago and extended all the way to Shenhuangzhou. Ma La remembered that back then, he and Guo Dongsheng were still in elementary school and had both participated in voluntary labor at the canal construction site. Chapter 15. As soon as Zhao Guangfu saw that some families' responsibility land in the village had been left fallow and overgrown with waist-high mugwort, his heart would ache unbearably. After that torrential rain, several consecutive days of clear, sunny weather raised temperatures on the plains considerably. Wheat and rice changed color day by day, gradually turning from green to yellow. The air was suffused everywhere with the fragrance of ripening crops. The Dragon Boat Festival was still several days away, and the tense, busy wheat harvest was about to begin. Several days before the sickles would be wielded, Zhao Guangfu began worrying about the wheat harvest. Zhao Guangfu's house sat on the west side of the canal, its back to the waterway facing the crop fields. At the end of the cropland stood the river embankment. The canal ran from north to south. Villagers' houses were built along the canal, a row on the east side, a row on the west side, neat and orderly like city streets. The village had previously been below the river embankment. During the Learn from Dazhai in Agriculture campaign, it relocated to the canal side. The canal was also excavated during those years, probably emulating the Red Flag Canal, and named Guangming Canal. Note, Learn from Dazhai was a major agricultural campaign during the Cultural Revolution. Red Flag Canal was a famous irrigation project in Henan. Initially, all the village houses were uniformly brick and tile structures with tiled roofs. Later, those families who became wealthy first gradually tore down the original single-story houses and used concrete prefab panels to build 2- and 3-story buildings. Zhao Guangfu was also among those who became wealthy first, but he still lived in an unremarkable old tile house. It wasn't that he lacked money to build a new house, so why hadn't he built one? All because his son Changqing opposed it. Changjing, a tile mason by trade, had become wealthy as a contractor in Yanhe County town and built an imposing building several stories high. The couple had long wanted to bring their parents to the city to enjoy good fortune, but Zhao Guangfu was single-mindedly devoted to tending his responsibility land. How could he bear to leave? He'd dealt with mud his whole life and wasn't used to living in the city's tall buildings. Every time he stayed 2 or 3 days, he'd feel stifled and restless, as if he'd lost his soul. Once back in Shenhuangzhou, with both feet on soft earth, his heart settled considerably. Zhao Guangfu once wanted to tear down the old tile house and build a new one so that when his son's family and youngest daughter, Man Yue, came home, they could live in a building just like the ones in the city. But his son, Changqing, didn't think this way. He worried that once a building was erected, his father would be even more determined not to go to the city. So he firmly disagreed. Father and son remained at this impasse right up to the present. When fields were first divided among households, the Zhao Guangfu family had only 6 or 7 mu of land, 3 mu of paddy fields, 4 mu of dry fields. His eldest son, Changqing, was in the city learning tile masonry. His youngest daughter, Man Yue, was still in elementary school. The farm work at home fell entirely on Zhao Guangfu and his wife, Cao Guijing. Back then, farming had prospects. Taxes were also light. Farming folk put all their energy into their own responsibility land, rarely harboring inappropriate thoughts. Bountiful harvests of grain and thriving livestock, these spring festival couplet phrases had come alive before their eyes. What wonderful years those were. Back then, Zhao Guangfu, not yet 40, had energy bursting from his whole body. Doing all the family's work alone still didn't seem enough. His excess vitality burned so hot that at night he'd slip from bed and run alone to the crop fields to wander, sniffing the wheat or rice fragrance filling the ground as if drunk. His greatest dream was, just as newspapers and radio broadcasts said, to rely on diligence to become wealthy and become Shenhuangzhou's first 10,000 yuan household. He still maintained the habit of reading newspapers and listening to radio broadcasts developed when serving as production team accountant. After the production team disbanded, he couldn't see newspapers anymore, but he bought a transistor radio and carried it with him when working in the fields. Especially every morning's Central People's Broadcasting Station news and newspaper digest program. This was something he unfailingly listened to, come hell or high water. Therefore, although Zhao Guangfu busied himself all day with dirt clods regarding national affairs and policy news, he knew no less than village party secretary Guo Dongsheng. Sometimes his wife, Cao Guiying, would scold him, "You're not a cadre. What's the use of knowing so much?" He'd glare and shoot back. "You don't understand. Farming has 3 dependencies. Depend on heaven, depend on earth, depend on policy. Missing anyone will cost you." Cao Guiying naturally couldn't out-argue the stubborn old man. Of course, facts also proved that truth was indeed on Zhao Guangfu's side. Over these years, most Shenhuangzhou families farmed less and less land. Some even abandoned it altogether. But Zhao Guangfu, he not only farmed his family's responsibility land better and better, he farmed more and more. Like a sow dropping piglets, the original 7 or 8 mu multiplied several times over. At night, when the couple chatted idly, his wife, Cao Guiying, said, "Our family farms so much land. Put this in the old days, and we'd count as landlords, right?" Zhao Guangfu immediately silenced his wife. "Don't talk nonsense. We subcontract others' responsibility land. At most, we're tenant farmers. The real landlord is the state, understand?" This statement was very policy-oriented. Cao Guiying seemed to understand, but didn't quite. As for Zhao Guangfu, that's what his mouth said, but in his heart, he felt very comfortable. He thought privately, "Who cares whether landlord or tenant farmer? Why think so much? As long as these several dozen mu are mine to farm and the money from selling crops, after deducting taxes and fees, all goes to us. That's enough. Development is the hard truth." Regarding his identity as a big farming household, Zhao Guangfu was quite satisfied. In Shenhuangzhou, in terms of prestige and seniority, aside from old team leader Guo Dawan, he, Zhao Guangfu, ranked next. Guo Dawan was a generation older, having served most of his life as production team leader and Brigade Poor Peasant Association chairman. Once the collective disbanded, his era ended too. All these years, Guo Dawan lived in the guard shack, drifting along the river embankment like a ghost shadow, no longer exerting any influence on Shenhuangzhou. Of course, his son Guo Dongsheng became village party secretary, inheriting his father's position, but Guo Dongsheng settled his family in Heku. He couldn't come to Shenhuangzhou more than a few times a month. He wasn't as familiar with village affairs as this big farming household. 2 years ago, Guo Dongsheng had even encouraged Zhao Guangfu to run for village head, but he was already over 50. Several dozen mu kept him busy enough. Where would he find the energy to worry about the whole village's affairs? Honestly, having lived most of his life, he was quite satisfied with his status in Shenhuangzhou. If one had to say there was still some dissatisfaction, it was that while his arms and legs could still work, he wanted to subcontract a few more mu to farm. Zhao Guangfu knew that nowadays national policy encouraged big households. They weren't afraid you'd farm too much land, only that land would lie fallow with nobody to farm it. If all the land went fallow, from whom would the state, town, and village collect their levies? Ordinarily, as soon as Zhao Guangfu saw that some families' responsibility land in the village had been left fallow and overgrown with waist-high mugwort, his heart would ache unbearably. He'd find every means to subcontract it, not feeling at ease until crops were planted. In Guo Dongsheng's words, he was closer to dirt clods his whole life than to his own wife. He didn't feel this was mockery. Rather, the village party secretary was praising him. Most of the village's young and middle-aged male laborers worked outside. They were unwilling to toil a whole year only to not earn money but pour in large sums for pesticides and fertilizers, unable even to pay grain taxes and fees. So many people would rather subcontract their family's responsibility for farming land to others. The women left at home, aside from watching children, idled away the time bored playing mahjong, or else helped the village's big farming households with short-term work during busy seasons, earning money to buy firewood, rice, oil, and salt. Men working outside didn't get paid monthly wages either. When bosses delayed wages, life at home was hard too. So in previous years, wheat harvest posed no difficulty at all for Zhao Guangfu. People wanting to do short-term work at his house lined up in droves. He could pick whoever he wanted. But recently, some slight changes seemed to have occurred. The most prominent change was fewer people doing short-term work than before. Previously, every busy season, without the employer even asking, the number of people volunteering outnumbered what one could handle. Now, when Zhao Guangfu and his wife Cao Guiying personally went door-to-door asking, several women made excuses that their own household work was too busy and politely declined. Was it because other families paid higher wages than the Zhao family? Obviously not. Zhao Guangfu had inquired with several other big households with fewer mu than him. They'd encountered similar problems. So where exactly was the root cause? There was only one answer. Starting from this spring, the policy from above had changed. The news about abolishing agricultural taxes, Zhao Guangfu first heard it on the radio. At first, he was skeptical. Paying taxes for farming had been the rule since ancient times. How could it suddenly be abolished? But for many consecutive days, from central to provincial radio stations, they repeatedly broadcast news about Central Document Number 1. This left no room for disbelief. Zhao Guangfu, characteristically cautious and steady, made a special trip to Hekou to find village party secretary Guo Dongsheng. Could this be fake? Village party secretaries and heads are all busy studying central documents, the secretary said clearly. From now on, the state's land is basically free to farm. Not only agricultural taxes, many levies from the town and village can't be randomly collected either. He looked quite unhappy saying this. Zhao Guangfu figured the party secretary was sulking about losing his future benefits, but he couldn't spare a thought for the secretary's worries. This heaven-sent good news made his body feel like an inflated ball, his feet barely touching ground as he returned home. At dinner, he had his wife, Tao Guichu, stir-fry 2 extra dishes. He even opened that bottle of Wuliangye his son Changqing had bought from Wuhan during the New Year that he'd been reluctant to drink, and drank several cups. Seeing him grinning from ear to ear, Cao Guiying asked curiously, "When you became a grandfather 2 years ago, you didn't drink this much. What makes you so happy?" Zhao Guangfu took a sip of liquor and pointed his chopsticks at Cao Guiying, saying seriously, "You don't understand. This is worth celebrating even more than having 1 grandson plus 1 granddaughter." Cao Guiying asked with confusion all over her face. "Didn't Changqing's wife already give us a grandson and granddaughter? Is she having another?" Zhao Guangfu knew she'd misunderstood. He gave her a look. "Where are you going with that? What I'm talking about is much more important than having grandchildren." Zhao Guangfu had already calculated in his heart. Abolishing agricultural taxes meant that over 200 yuan per mu in taxes and fees would not need to be paid. This amounted to nearly 10,000 yuan in additional annual income. How could such a huge benefit not make him happy? For several consecutive days, Zhao Guangfu laughed aloud even in his dreams. Before spring even began, he started increasing investment, busying himself preparing seeds and fertilizer for the upcoming spring planting, preparing to go all out. But what Zhao Guangfu hadn't anticipated was that some unexpected troubles also followed one after another. Quite a few people working outside gradually returned to the village, resuming care of their responsibility land. Previously, land that had been extensively abandoned became a hot commodity again. Other farming households who'd subcontracted their responsibility land to others, though not wanting to return to farming, also proposed increasing subcontract fees. With the state reducing taxes by such a large amount, who didn't want to share a bit of the policy dividend? This way, the benefits big households gained from the new policy were greatly discounted. However, the responsibility land originally belonged to them. National policy dividends should be enjoyed by all. How could a few people monopolize them? Thinking this way, big households also became more accepting. But the troubles didn't stop there. Wheat harvest approached day by day, but hiring short-term workers still had no resolution. At this critical juncture, some people proposed reclaiming responsibility for land subcontracted to big households for their own farming. Needless to say, as one of Shen Huangzhou's top 1 or 2 big farming households, Zhao Guangfu also encountered such matters. This morning, as soon as the sun peeked out, the temperature was already fierce. Zhao Guangfu was sharpening sickles at the south gable end of his house. He worked very hard, bare-chested, leaning forward, both hands' weight pressing entirely on the sickle. Bean-sized sweat beads oozed from the wrinkles on his forehead, dripping patter-patter to the ground, absorbed dry by dust in the blink of an eye. At the gable end stood a tall mulberry tree. Its branches clustered densely, impenetrable to wind, like a giant umbrella propped there. Rain couldn't fall through, sunlight couldn't penetrate. Whether sunny or rainy, Zhao Guangfu loved doing miscellaneous tasks here, chopping pig fodder, mending winnowing baskets, repairing old farm tools, and such. It was both bright and airy, with an open view. Looking into the distance from here, Shen Huangzhou's crop fields came into full view at a glance. What first entered his view was naturally the Zhao family's several dozen mu of dry fields. The 6 or 7 mu of responsibility land registered under Zhao Guangfu's name in the contract book actually occupied only a fraction of his actual cultivated area. The extra several dozen mu were gradually subcontracted from other families. At first, these subcontracted plots weren't together with his family's legally contracted land, but were scattered here and there, very inconvenient to cultivate and manage. Later, Zhao Guangfu negotiated with neighboring contractors. After much persuasion through mutual exchanges, he finally consolidated the scattered subcontracted plots. Don't think those plots seemed insignificant when scattered here and there, but once concentrated into one piece, forming a whole, they showed impressive scope. Think about it. That was a good several dozen mu of cropland flat as a threshing floor. Even walking unhurriedly around the perimeter for the time it takes to smoke a pipe, you might not reach the end. Never mind whether it's all in the contract book. Anyway, they're all under his care now. That is to say, he was the proper, legitimate master of these several dozen mu of prime cropland. Whatever crops I say to plant, that's what gets planted. However I say to tend them, that's how they're tended. Everything's decided by me, Zhao Guangfu, alone. No need to listen to others at all. Every time Zhao Guangfu worked at his house's gable end, or did nothing but sit in a bamboo chair smoking, such thoughts would pop into his mind. If it were spring, before him the rapeseed fields spread golden yellow, boundless as far as the eye could see, with swarms of bees flying back and forth among the flowers. In the summer, the fragrance of ripening wheat came in waves like an open wine cellar, making one feel drunk. In autumn, fields full of cotton were like pure white rosy clouds, layer upon layer, spreading all the way to the horizon. Walking in the cotton fields, one felt ready to ascend to immortality, as if flying into the clouds. How many people had tasted this feeling? Zhao Guangfu thought of his father, that man who toiled diligently his whole life, finally accumulating over a dozen mu of poor land, only to encounter the Communist Party's land reform. Not only was the land divided up, but he also wore a rich peasant hat from then on, seeming shorter than others wherever he went, never holding his head high again until death. Zhao Guangfu thought, compared to his father, he really lived like an immortal. The southerly wind blowing on one's body felt cool, imperceptibly drying the sweat. At Zhao Guangfu's feet lay a neat row of gleaming, sharpened sickles. He straightened his back, reached behind to pull over a bamboo chair, sat down and pulled from his pocket a crumpled cigarette pack. With 2 fingers, he carefully extracted an equally crumpled cigarette, put it to his lips, and was just about to light it with his lighter when someone wearing a straw hat crossed through the Zhao family's boundless wheat field, followed the flowering hibiscus hedge around the vegetable garden to the gable end, and silently walked before Zhao Guangfu. He removed his straw hat and said respectfully, "Uncle Zhao, I've come back." The moment the person removed his straw hat, Zhao Guangfu saw clearly that his right hand had only a solitary finger. A trace of vague unease passed through Zhao Guangfu's heart, but outwardly he remained calm. Unhurriedly, he lit the cigarette at his lips and took a deep drag before raising his head. "Oh, Gu Yu, I knew you'd come back," he said with lowered eyelids. "What are you busy with? You came home but didn't come sit at the house. Could it be you made a fortune outside?" "Listen to you. What fortune could I make?" Gu Yu smiled embarrassedly and raised his left hand. "I've been weeding the paddy fields, haven't I?" "Oh yes, I almost forgot. You still have over 1 mu of paddy field." Zhao Guangfu saw grass clippings stuck to Gu Yu's hair and clothes. A trace of a smile appeared on his originally rigid face. His lips left the cigarette. He wanted to say, "When you finish the wedding, come help at my house for a few days. My several dozen mu of wheat are ripe and will need harvesting soon." But before Zhao Guangfu could speak, Gu Yu's next words startled him. "Uncle Zhao, this time I'm back. I'm not planning to leave again." "Not leaving? What do you mean by that?" Zhao Guangfu hadn't reacted yet. Gu Yu stammered and lowered his head, avoiding the other's gaze as if dodging. Toward this big farming household of Shenhuangzhou, Gu Yu's heart always harbored some lingering fear. This stemmed partly from Zhao Guangfu's pivotal status in the village and partly from his former entanglement with Zhao Manyue. Gu Yu was 2 or 3 years older than Zhao Guangfu's daughter, Zhao Manyu. When he was a sophomore at Heko Middle School, Manyu was only in 9th grade. Although they were in different grades because they were from the same village, Gu Yu cared for her like his own younger sister. The middle school and high school sections ate in the same cafeteria. Sometimes, when the line was crowded or Manyue got out of class late, Gu Yu would use his own meal tickets to buy food and deliver it to Manyu's classroom or dormitory. Sometimes, when Manyu encountered difficult homework problems, Gu Yu would put aside his own homework and take time to help her. Ordinarily, Man Yu always called him Brother Gu Yu. That crisp voice made Gu Yu feel as sweet as honey. In his eyes, Man Yu was a beautiful girl, with a face round as her name, full moon, eyes big and bright like two pools of clear water, rippling with infinite vitality. Man Yue especially loved to laugh. Her giggling laugh was like silver bells, each time startling the swallows under the classroom eaves to fly far away. Gu Yu felt Man Yu's laughter was the most wonderful music in the world, never tiring of hearing it. This was how he quietly came to like Man Yu. At that time, he borrowed a novel Life from his Chinese teacher Ma La. Every day after class, he read this novel. The novel's protagonist, Gao Jialin, simultaneously liked two girls. One was the simple, pure country girl Liu Qiaozhen. The other was the refined city girl Huang Yaping. Gao Jialin's tortuous life experiences and romantic love fascinated 16-year-old middle school student Gu Yu. He imagined if he also simultaneously encountered two lovable girls, would he treat Liu Qiaozhen like Gao Jialin? The answer was naturally negative. No, I would never be as callous and ungrateful as Gao Jialin. Man Yu's beautiful image floated through Gu Yu's mind. Gu Yu felt Man Yu had both a country girl's simple purity and a city girl's dignified elegance. Gu Yu thought Man Yue was his Liu Qiaozhen and Huang Yaping. At that time, quite a few male students at Heku High School were dating. Gu Yu quickly also joined this ranks. When the second semester of 10th grade ended, his and Man Yu's relationship was semi-public at school. On weekends after school, Gu Yu unabashedly walked home together with Man Yu. At that time, Man Yu was about to graduate 9th grade. She wasn't planning to advance to high school, but directly took the technical secondary school exam. After the middle school exam finished, Heko Middle School went on vacation. Gu Yu accompanied Man Yu back to the village. That time, he walked Man Yu all the way to her home. Under a large mulberry tree at the entrance, the two were still whispering intimately, heads together, when unexpectedly Man Yu's father, Zhao Guangfu, suddenly appeared before them. In panic, Gu Yu quickly released Man Yu's hand. Just about to leave, Zhao Guangfu stopped him. "Boy, I've long known you had designs on my Man Yu." Zhao Guangfu's gaze stabbed at Gu Yu like an awl, leaving him nowhere to hide. "I'll tell you clearly today, there's not even a chance of this happening." Gu Yu felt Zhao Guangfu's tone carried a threat. "Don't blame me for speaking hurtfully. You're not worthy of my Man Yu. She's about to enter technical secondary school. Don't pester her anymore from now on. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." This was the first time in Gu Yu's life he'd received such an open threat. A humiliation he'd never experienced made tears flow from his eyes. From then on, self-respect and inferiority caused Gu Yu and Man Yu to break off all contact. Even after he married, when he saw Man Yu, who'd started working in the county seat, return to the village, he'd avoid her from afar. At this moment, Gu Yu raised his head and faced that intimidating face directly, saying word by word, "Uncle Zhao, I want to reclaim my family's responsibility land. Fennel and I will farm it ourselves." Having said this, Gu Yu breathed a sigh of relief, as if a burden had been lifted. Zhao Guangfu's mind felt like several bees had flown into it, buzzing in chaos. He kept smacking his lips. The cigarette spewed thick smoke. His entire face was shrouded in smoke. Several years ago, when Gu Yu, working in the city, came home for New Year, village party secretary Guo Dongsheng led a group demanding overdue grain taxes and fees. Gu Yu was chased from home to the canal and hid in a wheat straw stack at his door, avoiding being taken to the township government's study class by Guo Dongsheng's people. Later, Gu Yu, owing a pile of debts, had no choice but to subcontract his family's responsibility land to him. The old debts he didn't care about, but from then on, every year's grain taxes, fees, and levies would be paid by him. At that time, Shenhuangzhou was full of abandoned cropland everywhere. For many people, responsibility land was not wealth, but a burden. His accepting Gu Yu's responsibility land was equivalent to helping him tremendously. But now, this young man with only 3 fingers on his left hand suddenly said to him that he wanted to reclaim his responsibility land to farm himself. Where did he get the guts? just because the state was abolishing agricultural taxes? But ultimately, that was only 1 or 200 yuan per mu, right? Really wanting to farm for profit wasn't so simple. Not to mention, input costs were frighteningly high. Even if agricultural prices suddenly dropped, one might still lose money. Zhao Guangfu couldn't figure it out no matter how he thought. Suddenly, he recalled that scene many years ago, under the big mulberry tree at his own door, those words he'd said in front of Gu Yu. So, Gu Yu is taking revenge on me? Thinking this, a trace of contemptuous cold smile appeared on Zhao Guangfu's face. One person farming several dozen mu. I know you're a bit overwhelmed. Seeing Zhao Guangfu not responding, Gu Yu said considerately, Don't worry, I'll take over after the wheat's harvested. Zhao Guangfu had completely calmed down. Fine, after harvesting wheat, I'll give you the field. No need to go through procedures anyway. Simple. As he spoke, he threw the cigarette butt that had burned to his fingers onto the ground, stepped on it heavily with his foot, stopped looking at Gu Yu and walked straight toward the house. Uncle Zhao, there's one more thing, Gu Yu called after him. I just came from Teacher Ma's. He said Party Secretary Guo sent you a message that Man Yue is coming home for the Dragon Boat Festival. Zhao Guangfu's steps paused slightly. He grunted through his nose, indicating he knew. Then, without looking back, he went into the house. During breakfast, Zhao Guangfu was somewhat absent-minded, his face sullen, saying not a word from start to finish. Usually, he drank 3 large bowls of thin congee, but today, he only drank 1 bowl. He didn't even touch the salted duck egg placed before him. His wife, Chao Guishu, thought Zhao Guangfu was still worried about hiring workers, so she comforted him. Don't fret. There are still several days, aren't there? I'll go look for people again. If worst comes to worst, I'll ask those brothers and sisters to come help. I don't believe our wheat will rot in the fields. The brothers and sisters Chao Guishu mentioned referred to her fellow Jesus Church believers. In recent years, Christianity had spread quickly in Hekou. Shen Huangzhou alone had several believers, mostly older women like Chao Guishu. After finishing household chores and farm work, they'd go together to Hekou for worship services. The town had a church built with believers' donations. Every Saturday and Sunday, believers from surrounding villages would gather at the church to sing hymns and recite scriptures, livelier than opera performances. These believers were very close to each other. When anyone encountered difficulties, they helped enthusiastically, as if they'd truly become brothers and sisters through that common Father. Aside from burning a few incense sticks to the god of wealth and earth god during New Year, Zhao Guangfu believed in nothing, so he'd never much supported Cao Guishu's belief in Jesus. He felt that since believing in Jesus, Cao Guishu had become weird, even muttering prayers when eating, attributing every day's grain and water to that omnipotent God, Jesus. More laughable was that Cao Guishu originally barely knew any characters, yet every free moment she'd hold a brick-thick Bible, pretending to read while chanting, "May our Father and our Lord Jesus always lead us to you, and may the Lord cause you to increase and abound in love for one another and for all, as we do for you, so that he may establish your hearts blameless in holiness before our God and Father, at the coming of our Lord Jesus with all his saints." Cao Guishu had previously suffered from chronic headaches. Strangely, since believing in Jesus, she'd never had another episode. Cao Guishu credited this entirely to Jesus. This way, even if Zhao Guangfu wanted to oppose her belief, he couldn't find a suitable excuse. Fortunately, Cao Guishu wasn't like some believers who, after converting, neglected their families, relatives, and household chores. She believed as she believed, but still managed household matters large and small, orderly as before. The vegetable garden lacked no vegetables year-round. Every busy farming season, she'd personally invite men and women from the village to do short-term work. When rape should be cut, cut rape. When wheat should be planted, plant wheat. When wheat should be harvested, harvest wheat. When cotton should be picked, pick cotton. She managed everything inside and out flawlessly. Even workers' wages were distributed through her hands without a single mistake. To be fair, without Cao Guishu as his helper, if those several dozen mu of contracted land pressed on Zhao Guangfu alone, chaos would have erupted long ago. Thinking back, when his parents took in this plain-looking, skinny refugee woman and decided on their own to have their son in his 20s marry her, Zhao Guangfu was quite unwilling, sulking for a long time, only consummating the marriage half a year later. Now it seemed that a rich peasant's son with a stubborn, taciturn temperament marrying such a gentle, virtuous, diligent, capable wife was truly his good fortune. Sometimes when Zhao Guangfu thought this way in his old age, he felt his past quick temper with Cao Guiqiu was so inappropriate. He should treat her better in the future, otherwise his parents underground wouldn't forgive him. This way, Zhao Guangfu, originally disapproving of Cao Guiqiu's belief, turned a blind eye and let her be. But today, Cao Guiqiu's comforting words not only failed to dispel Zhao Guangfu's irritation, but made him sigh deeply. His wrinkled face contracted like a bitter melon. He turned his body aside and muttered resentfully, "I'm afraid in the future we can hire workers but won't have fields." Cao Guiqiu was startled hearing this, not understanding what he meant. After carefully mulling it over and thinking of Gu Yu's earlier visit, she immediately guessed her husband's worry pretty accurately. Is Gu Yu wanting to reclaim the fields? Zhao Guangfu grunted heavily through his nose in response. Cao Guiqiu, who'd been drinking congee, put down her bowl and said, "If he wants them back, let him have them. We're already this old, farming less land. We'll just have free time to go to the city and see our grandson more." "I'm afraid what you really have in mind isn't seeing grandson but going to the town church for worship services." Zhao Guangfu gave Cao Guiqiu an annoyed look, thinking to himself, "You sure talk lightly. I've farmed Gu Yu's family's few mu for years, tending them like raising livestock until they're familiar. His suddenly taking them back is like cutting a piece of flesh from my body. How can it not hurt?" He thought this, but didn't say it aloud. After all, back when he personally snuffed out that romance between Gu Yu and Man Yue wasn't anything worth boasting about. Although rebuked, good-tempered Cao Guiqiu didn't take offense. She knew her husband's stubborn temperament. Until the knot in his heart was untied, he absolutely wouldn't show a smile. So she could only continue finding words to console him. Gu Yu and his wife never made anything of farming before. All year round, they couldn't fill their bellies, even owed the village a pile of debts, and didn't dare come home. Now suddenly they've had a change of heart about farming. Unless he got some secret knowledge from somewhere, why would he take this risk? Isn't it just because the state's abolishing agricultural taxes? One mu saves only that much money. If crops don't grow well, won't it still lose money? Cao Guiqiu pursed her lips. Why do you think Gu Yu is doing this? Could it be he's possessed? How would I know? That kid mixed around outside for years. Didn't make money, but his scheming multiplied. Zhao Guangfu said with a somewhat gloomy expression. Cao Guiqiu said, Lately, more and more villagers are running to that house with the windmill at the embankment foot. Zhao Guangfu's eyebrows wriggled like two silkworms. You mean Ma La's place? Gu Yu runs there most often, doesn't even spare the time he goes to haul water from the river. Zhao Guangfu gradually grasped the meaning in his wife's words. So Ma La gave him some idea? Without waiting for Cao Guiqiu to answer, he muttered again. Yes, it must be so. Gu Yu used to be his student. That kid has backing now and doesn't put me in his eyes. Humph, I knew all along this Ma La coming back was no good thing. He's seen the big world. How can a tiny place like Shenhuangzhou withstand his tossing about? Seeing her husband's mood not only hadn't relaxed but appeared even more worried, Cao Guiqiu deliberately changed the subject. Just now I heard Gu Yu say Man Yue sent word she's coming home for Dragon Boat Festival. Coming home is coming home. It's not like she's some rare guest. Zhao Guangfu said somewhat impatiently, muttering to himself, those two brothers have never been ones to stay put. Chapter 16. As the former principal violinist of Yanhe County Song and Dance Troupe and music instructor at the Cultural Center, he was thoroughly versed in all the techniques for dealing with women. In the Jingjiang area, Dragon Boat Festival was called Duanyang Festival. In the countryside, people's emphasis on Duanyang Festival was second only to Mid-Autumn Festival and Spring Festival. As Duanyang Festival approached, The village would be suffused with the fresh, fragrant scent of mugwort and zongzi leaves mixed together. The usually chaotic areas in front of and behind houses were swept spotlessly clean. The mosquitoes and flies that normally bumped into people became markedly fewer. The village appeared neat and refreshing, like a woman carefully groomed. Even the weather was exceptionally fine, sunshine bright as a clear pool, spreading brightness wherever it fell. For country folk, the days before and after Duanyang Festival were actually the busiest. Rice had just been planted not long ago. Before they'd had time to wipe the sweat from their faces, wheat needed harvesting. People rose early and retired late, lacking even time to eat a proper meal. But no matter how busy, Duanyang Festival couldn't be treated carelessly. However tight money was, households had to buy a jin or so of meat, a jin or so of liquor, pickle salted eggs, wrap zongzi, pull some mugwort from wild fields to insert at doorways to ward off evil and pestilence. Newly married daughters bringing their new son-in-laws home to see parents, engaged young men preparing gifts to honor future fathers-in-law and mothers-in-law. These were proprieties since ancient times. As for those working in cities, if the journey wasn't too far or they could get leave, they'd find every means to return home to eat a meal of fragrant new rice and glutinous rice zongzi, sleep one night in the family's soft platform bed, then rush back to the city the next day. On the morning of Duanyang Festival, along the canal road connecting Heku to Shenhuangzhou, a motorized three-wheeler with green canvas canopy carried two customers, a man and a woman, stopping and starting, slow as an ant. When encountering openings dug by nearby farming households for irrigation, but not yet filled in, those in the vehicle had to get out and help push and lift the three-wheeler across. In just 5 or 6 lei of canal road, there were 2 or 3 such openings. By the time they neared Shenhuangzhou, not only the driver but even the 2 passengers had shoes, clothing, and hands covered with mud, looking quite bedraggled. These 2 customers were dressed quite fastidiously, clearly city folk. The woman had short hair, a round face, phoenix eyes, wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt on top and jeans below, making her legs look especially long. One couldn't tell her actual age, but she was probably not young. The man looked about 50, suited and leather-shod, impressive in appearance, his whole person seeming spirited. Looking closely, one would notice his hair was dyed. At this moment, having just helped push the three-wheeler across an opening, he looked down at his originally glossy leather shoes now covered with muddy water. Even those high-quality suit pants had mud specks on the cuffs. He stamped his feet in annoyance, furrowing his thick eyebrows and complaining, "This canal road had tractors going through over 30 years ago. Who'd have thought that now even motorized three-wheelers have such difficulty? Really absurd." "If people hadn't dug it open for irrigation, cars would have no problem at all," the woman said intimately, holding his arm, her tone consoling. "If you don't believe me, next time drive your own car in and try—" The man snorted through his nose, non-committal, but his expression noticeably softened. At this point, the woman turned to ask the three-wheeler driver, "Little Cripple, are there more openings ahead?" Little Cripple was a half-grown kid of 14 or 15. Having busied himself pushing the vehicle up and down, his hands and face were covered with muddy water. He was thin and small, his legs not nimble, exhausted and covered in sweat. Although the canal being dug up this way wasn't his fault, he obviously felt somewhat apologetic about troubling these 2 customers to suffer along with him. He quickly answered, "No more, Sister Manu. Get in the vehicle. I guarantee no more openings ahead." Hearing this, Manu climbed back into the three-wheeler. The man hesitated, patted the remaining mud from his hands, and also returned to the vehicle. Little Cripple limped onto the driver's seat and started the motor. The three-wheeler shuddered violently like an epileptic seizure, then roared forward. When daughter Manue brought a completely unfamiliar man riding in Little Cripple's motorized three-wheeler through the door, Zhao Guangfu, who was repairing a basket in the main room, didn't even shift his rear end, appearing extremely cold. Manue and that man came in carrying large and small packages of gifts. Manue respectfully called out, "Dad!" That man also called out, "Uncle!" Zhao Guangfu only grunted through his nose, didn't even raise his head, and continued repairing his basket. "Dad, this is, old Li Haijun," Man Yue said. "He used to be sent down to our village. Now he runs his own company." But Zhao Guangfu still didn't raise his head. "Uncle, you should still remember me. I taught at the Brigade Elementary School," Li Haijun said humbly with a smiling face, introducing himself. "I even ate a meal at your house once, though back then Man Yue hadn't started elementary school yet." Unexpectedly, hearing this, Zhao Guangfu's expression became even uglier. He glanced at Li Haijun with the corner of his eye, deliberately twisted his body to the side, snorted heavily through his nose as if unable to hold back and about to explode in anger. This situation was somewhat awkward. Cao Guiqiu, always good at smoothing things over, quickly came to mediate. She brought 2 cups of tea, giving one each to Man Yue and Li Haijun, while signaling to her daughter with her eyes. "The stubborn old man is busy, has no time to chat idly with you. Go sit outside. There's a breeze outside. It's cool." Man Yue understood her mother's intention and went with the flow, tugging Li Haijun. The two walked out of the main room together. Cao Guiqiu couldn't spare energy to argue with Zhao Guangfu. She tied on her apron and went into the kitchen to cook, leaving the stubborn old man in the main room to sulk alone. Zhao Guangfu was indeed angry at daughter Man Yu. Man Yu was already a full 30 years old, and her personal matter still wasn't resolved. Girls her age in the village had long since married. Their children were already several years old, but Man Yu aimed too high, unwilling to settle. Over the years, she'd changed countless boyfriends, but always broke up before reaching marriage. After graduating middle school, Man Yu attended Yanhe County's technical secondary school, later was recruited into Yanhe Fertilizer Factory, now Chufeng Group, with salary and benefits no worse than classmates who'd been admitted to university. Man Yue was beautiful, so naturally more particular in choosing partners than ordinary girls. From technical school to the company, whether those she knew herself or those others introduced, countless young men, but she hadn't taken a fancy to any. Unknowingly, she'd dragged it out to this age where even her parents had started worrying. Every time she came home, they nagged constantly in her ears, urging her to find a partner and start a family. Man Yu's ears had developed calluses from hearing it. Later, aside from Spring Festival, she was too lazy to come home all year round. This time, coming home for Duanyang Festival was truly unprecedented, yet she brought back a partner not much younger than her father. How could this not anger Zhao Guangfu, who'd already been feeling uncomfortable lately? What made Zhao Guangfu feel even more unacceptable was that the man Man Yue brought back was actually a former sent-down youth who'd been to Shenhuangzhou. Although Li Haijun claimed he'd once eaten a meal at his house, Zhao Guangfu didn't remember this person's youthful appearance at all. Over 20 years ago, when sent-down youth came to Shenhuangzhou, Zhao Guangfu was in his 30s, newly married, serving as production team accountant. He frequently dealt with the sent-down youth and never had a good impression of them. He felt these young people raised delicately in the city, aside from mouths that loved spouting grand words, reading many books, and being able to sing and dance, really had no commendable virtues. Working in fields, they couldn't even distinguish wheat seedlings from weeds. At first, when they ate meals assigned at commune members' homes, who didn't treat them as honored guests? But later, after moving into collective households, they'd sneak into villagers' homes under cover of darkness every few days to steal chickens. An old hen of Zhao Guangfu's family that was laying eggs was stolen by them. One sent-down youth even tricked the brigade's barefoot doctor into having an abortion. Was that scoundrel this Li Haijun? Because too much time had passed, he wasn't sure. But anyway, in Zhao Guangfu's eyes, these sent-down youth loafed about idly, lazy and gluttonous, none much better than second-rate riffraff. Zhao Guangfu sat alone in the main room repairing his basket while sulking. Before he knew it, Cao Guiqiu had lunch ready. Regarding what was making Zhao Guangfu angry, Cao Guiqiu saw clearly and understood completely. Actually, as a mother, Wasn't she also holding back a bellyful of anger that her daughter had suddenly brought back a partner about her own age? She complained that her daughter was too inconsiderate, such a major matter, yet she didn't consult their opinion. She also blamed their son Changqing in the city, only focused on business, not caring at all about his sister's life. But Cao Guiqiu had always been magnanimous and reasonable. She figured complaining was complaining, but now that her daughter had led the person through the door, they should treat him as a guest. Besides, he was also someone with status and identity. No need to make a scene and let people say country folk don't understand propriety. From visiting as a guest to eventually marrying the Zhao family daughter is still 100,000 li away. No need to worry about a guest visiting for the first time, Cao Guiqiu advised Zhao Guangfu while serving dishes. At worst, later we'll have Manyue break up with him. She was afraid that during the meal Zhao Guangfu would still be so stony-faced, making everyone uncomfortable. When Cao Guiqiu called Manyu and old Li inside to eat, she saw the three-wheeler still stopped at the door. Obviously, it had broken down. Little Cripple lay on the ground tinkering with a wrench, his hands and face covered with grease. Cao Guiqiu retreated into the house and whispered in Zhao Guangfu's ear, wanting Little Cripple to come in and eat lunch together. Zhao Guangfu, in a bad mood, furrowed his brow and waved his hand, meaning to have his wife just send Little Cripple away. Cao Guiqiu was warm-hearted. Ordinarily, when eating, if someone came visiting, she'd always have them stay to eat together. But since Zhao Guangfu had spoken, she couldn't well disobey. She could only circle the room and go to the kitchen to serve everyone rice. But just as she stepped forward, Zhao Guangfu called her back again. Just call Little Cripple inside to eat a meal. There's nobody at his house to cook. Going back to town to eat, won't that cost money? Cao Guiqiu didn't know what medicine the stubborn old man was selling in his gourd, suddenly changing his mind. But in any case, this was a decision that pleased her, so she quickly took small steps and went out to call Little Cripple. Speaking of it, Little Cripple's relationship with the Zhao Guangfu family was somewhat special. Little Cripple was surnamed Zhao, not only sharing the same clan as Zhao Guangfu, but by generation, Little Cripple should call Zhao Guangfu elder brother. But after all, the age gap was too great, and their status in Shenhuangzhou was very disparate, so Little Cripple and his father Zhao Guangrong both respectfully called Zhao Guangfu uncle. Zhao Guangrong was a few years younger than Zhao Guangfu, of the same generation as village party secretary Guo Dongsheng and Ma La, an honest, straightforward farmer. Though possessing brute strength, he lacked shrewdness. Years ago, he went with others to Shaanxi to mine coal. At first, he made some money, frequently sending money home. His wife Dohua was so pleased she acted as if she'd struck it rich, even too lazy to work the land, spending all day playing mahjong with people at Old Wan's small shop by the sluice gate. Dohua usually didn't like working, always loved dressing herself up gaudily. Whether she had business or not, money or not, she loved going to Hekou to shop. Not to mention the weeds in the crop fields grew taller than cotton. Even that lame son, Little Cripple, who was still in school, she was too lazy to care for. Later, the small coal mine where Zhao Guangrong dug coal had a roof collapse. He and over a dozen migrant workers were all trapped inside. Not one escaped. After Zhao Guangrong's accident, supposedly the mine owner compensated the family quite a bit of money, tens of thousands of yuan. Duhua personally went to the mine to collect it. But not long after, Duhua suddenly vanished from Shenhuangzhou with that money. Supposedly, she'd eloped with a street performer from Hekou who did magic tricks. Little Cripple suddenly became an orphan. Little Cripple wasn't yet 15, thin and small as a bean sprout, and a cripple besides. Forget farming. He didn't even know how to take care of himself. How would he get through the days ahead? As a clan member, Zhao Guangfu couldn't remain unmoved. He had Cao Guiqiu take 2 bags of dried noodles bought in town and over a dozen eggs laid by their family's hen to the solitary Little Cripple, having Little Cripple subcontract to him the few mu of responsibility land at his home overgrown with weeds. Little Cripple, who after losing his parents often went hungry, agreed immediately without thinking. Although farming doesn't make much money nowadays, you might even lose money. Cao Guiqiu's words were airtight. But your uncle, considering you're alone, promises that whether farming makes money or not, after a while he'll give you some money to buy a second-hand three-wheeler to pull passengers in Haiku. With your inconvenient legs, you can only do this kind of work. This orphan with no one to turn to practically regarded Zhao Guangfu as his savior. From then on, every few days he'd run to the Zhao house. When it was mealtime, warm-hearted Tao Guiqiu would have him stay to eat. Zhao Guangfu, having just subcontracted Little Cripple's responsibility land, naturally didn't object. For a while, the Zhao house practically became Little Cripple's cafeteria. Every few days he'd come mooch a meal. Over time, Zhao Guangfu became somewhat impatient, regretting his initial promise to give Little Cripple that money. He worried Little Cripple would henceforth stick to him, becoming a burden he couldn't shake off. What was this all about? Aside from also being surnamed Zhao, what relationship did he have with the Zhao family? I can't very well find myself an ancestor to support. Accustomed to scheming and careful calculation, Zhao Guangfu felt he couldn't let himself be stuck to like this. After much thought, the only way to extricate himself was to quickly fulfill that promise. True to his word, the next day he had Cao Guiqiu give Little Cripple 300 yuan. After that, he never let Cao Guiqiu have Little Cripple stay to eat at home again. Fortunately, Little Cripple used that money to buy a second-hand motorized three-wheeler and ran a passenger-pulling business in Haiku, no longer coming to mooch meals at Zhao Guangfu's house as frequently as before. But today, Zhao Guangfu uncharacteristically had Little Cripple stay for a meal, leaving Cao Guiqiu somewhat puzzled, figuring the stubborn old man in doing this surely had his reasons. But Cao Guiqiu had no time to think more about this matter. Menu suddenly bringing a partner home without warning left the old couple somewhat at a loss. Right now, most urgently, how exactly should they treat this uninvited guest? Cao Guiqiu's cooking skills were famous in Shenhuangzhou. Quite a few new daughter-in-laws newly married into Shenhuangzhou came seeking advice from her. Years ago, when the town sent work teams to work in the countryside, cadres also loved eating and staying at the Zhao house. Actually, not just cooking, including tending vegetable gardens and pickling preserved vegetables, all were taught by Zhao Guangfu's mother to Cao Guiqiu. Initially, when Cao Guiqiu fled famine to Shenhuangzhou and was taken in by the Zhao family, she was clumsy, unable to do either housework or farm work. Nobody anticipated that after 2 years of hand-by-hand tutoring by Zhao Guangfu's shrewd, capable mother, the refugee woman transformed into a capable woman who could enter the kitchen, exit to the hall, handling matters large and small with ease. That Cao Guiqiu became the Zhao family's daughter-in-law, villagers all felt was mostly thanks to Zhao Guangfu's mother. So later when Zhao Guangfu's mother passed away, Cao Guiqiu cried herself hoarse, more heartbroken than the son. This Duanyang festival lunch at the Zhao house was as sumptuous as New Year. Besides the main dishes of pork, bream, and their own chickens that Zhao Guangfu had personally gone to Haiku to buy 2 days ago, the other eggplant, long beans, green peppers, loofah, and tomatoes were all fresh vegetables just picked from the vegetable garden. Add several small dishes of homemade pickled salted duck eggs, preserved radish, fermented tofu, and fried peppers, plus fragrant zongzi. Before even touching chopsticks, one's mouth watered. Although the whole room was fragrant, at the start the atmosphere at this Duanyang festival table in the Zhao house truly wasn't relaxed. More than not relaxed, it was somewhat awkward. Just looking at Zhao Guangfu sitting in the seat of honor with a stony face and lowered eyelids, who could relax? Kind-hearted, soft-hearted Cao Guiqiu saw this and worried, but could devise no solution. Man Yue knew her parents had opinions about her arbitrarily bringing her boyfriend home. With Zhao Guangfu's temperament, not making things difficult for her on the spot was already tremendous face. So she didn't dare act like before with her youngest daughter temperament. She spoke softly, transformed into an obedient girl, constantly stealing glances at Li Haijun sitting beside her, as if reminding him to be careful in words and deeds, absolutely not stepping on a landmine. The only one who seemed unaware of the stakes was Little Cripple. He hadn't eaten at the Zhao house in quite a while. Facing a table full of fragrant dishes, where did he have leisure to gauge Zhao Guangfu's expression? He only wanted to eat his fill, then hurry back to town for business. On this Duanyang festival day, the Zhao house seemed to face a storm that could erupt at any moment, and the partner Man Yu brought was obviously at this storm's center. Regarding this, former sent-down youth Li Haijun seemed to have anticipated it long ago. He showed not the slightest tension or unease. On the contrary, he appeared calm and composed, conversing and laughing freely. Even after offering Zhao Guangfu a cigarette and being refused without courtesy, he acted as if nothing had happened, displaying the magnanimity and bearing characteristic of someone with status who'd seen the world. This wasn't strange at all. For the experienced Li Haijun, what did such a scene amount to? If he couldn't even smooth over this little matter, what great things could he accomplish in this lifetime? Not to mention that he, Li Haijun, was a company boss of no small size. Just based on the 2 marriages he'd experienced before, Tang Lina's father, his former father-in-law, was even a county committee leader. This at least counted as credentials. He wouldn't suffer defeat before Zhao Guangfu, who might very well become his 3rd father-in-law. Moreover, over 20 years ago he'd been sent down here, accepting re-education from poor and lower-middle peasants. He considered himself more understanding of farmers than ordinary city folk, closer to farmers, able to get along harmoniously with them. This was also why he'd decided to choose Zhao Manyue as his 3rd wife. In the process from meeting Manyu to capturing her heart and clarifying their relationship, he'd expended almost no effort. As the former principal violinist of Yanhe County Song and Dance Troupe and music instructor at the Cultural Center, he was thoroughly versed in all the techniques for dealing with women. So before Manyu, he had sufficient confidence and superiority. As for the age gap between him and Manyu, he felt it could be completely disregarded. Therefore, when Manyu mentioned her parents might oppose their relationship because of this, a mocking smile appeared at Li Haijun's lips. He sighed. It seems the serious problem is still educating the peasants. Manyu felt these words sounded somewhat profound. Now, facing Zhao Guangfu sitting stone-faced in the seat of honor, Li Haijun appeared even more patient than before signing contracts with company clients. His face bore the polite, respectful smile characteristic of a younger generation facing elders. Although Zhao Guangfu was only a few years older, he faced his future father-in-law. Even if this person currently treated him so dismissively, unwilling even to give him a proper glance, he didn't mind at all. Since you want to marry someone's daughter, can't you even endure this bit of grievance? Thinking this way, Li Haijun's heart not only felt much relieved, but even felt as if receiving some courtesy. His heart felt quite pleased and happy. From the large pile of gifts brought, he extracted a bottle of Mao Tai liquor, skillfully pried open the cap, and generously walked before Zhao Guangfu, pouring a full cup. Zhao Guangfu didn't express opposition. Li Haijun poured himself a cup, raised it, and after drinking 2 cups consecutively, said, "Uncle, these 2 cups are from Manyue and me to honor you." Zhao Guangfu's eyelids moved slightly, but he showed no intention of raising his cup. Cao Guiqiu, sitting beside Zhao Guangfu, quickly mediated, raising her chopsticks. "Eat! Eat! All vegetables we grew ourselves. Don't know if they suit your taste? Really delicious, genuine country vegetables. One taste and you know they haven't been sprayed with pesticides or chemical fertilizers." Li Haijun tasted a few bites and praised repeatedly. If these vegetables were sold in the city, they'd surely be very expensive, right? Zhao Guangfu drank a mouthful of liquor on his own, his tone stiff. "Things from our own vegetable garden, no matter how expensive, we won't sell." Exactly. Li Haijun followed along, agreeing. "I heard from Manyu that Uncle farms several dozen mu. Must be quite hard work." Zhao Guangfu was chewing a piece of chicken and didn't answer. Cao Guiqiu picked up the conversation. "Absolutely. Not only can he not manage, even I have to suffer along with him. If we'd followed Manyu's brother's wishes, we'd have gone to the city to enjoy good fortune long ago. Whether from drinking a few mouthfuls of liquor or from anger, Zhao Guangfu's face and neck had turned red. He gave his wife an annoyed look. "If you want to go to the city to enjoy good fortune, I won't stop you. Without Butcher Jiang, we don't eat pork with bristles. Without you, can't I still farm?" Perhaps because Man Yue and guests were present, Cao Guiqiu didn't back down either, retorting, "No matter how capable you are, can you harvest wheat alone? Can't hire people. Won't you just stare helplessly?" Zhao Guangfu seemed suddenly choked, unable to speak. Li Haijun, who'd been politely watching the old couple bicker, heard there was an article in these words and asked Cao Guiqiu, "Auntie, what difficulty have you encountered?" Cao Guiqiu hesitated, then told Li Haijun about being unable to hire people to harvest wheat. But before finishing, Li Haijun thumped his raised wine cup on the table and said matter-of-factly, "So it's just this small matter? Uncle, Auntie, if you trust me, leave harvesting wheat to me. Just recently I partnered with friends to open an agricultural machinery service station. We just purchased several harvesters. Whichever day we drive them over, several dozen mu of wheat, less than half a day's work will take care of it." Hearing this, Cao Guiqiu looked at daughter Man Yu with half-belief. Man Yu felt this was a great opportunity for Li Haijun to gain face before her parents. She quickly testified by nodding repeatedly. "It's true, Mom. Old Li owns half the shares in the agricultural machinery station, harvesting wheat for our family. Isn't that a piece of cake?" Having said this much, 3 people turned their gazes toward Zhao Guangfu, as if just waiting for the household head to make the decision. But Zhao Guangfu, sitting in the seat of honor, showed an indifferent expression. The previous discussion seemed not to arouse the slightest interest. Cao Guiqiu couldn't hold back, poking Zhao Guangfu with her chopsticks. "Stubborn old man, haven't you been so anxious about harvesting wheat these past days you can't sleep at night? Just make a sound." But Zhao Guangfu acted as if he hadn't heard, turning his face toward little cripple sitting beside him eating silently with head down. "Don't just eat rice, eat some vegetables." He also instructed Cao Guiqiu, waiting for his response. "Serve him a chicken leg, haven't come to eat at home in a while, acting unfamiliar." Cao Guiqiu was startled, privately wondering. Ordinarily, even when Zhao Guangfu encountered little cripple on the road, he kept a stony face, rarely showing a smile. How come he's suddenly so concerned about him now? Cao Guiqiu really couldn't figure out what calculation Zhao Guangfu was making in his heart. Li Haijun seemed to see through Zhao Guangfu's thoughts and said, "Uncle, I know what you're worried about. Rest assured, a nail is a nail, a rivet is a rivet. When I was sent down to Shenhuangzhou before, I at least ate assigned meals at your house. Helping with this is appropriate. As for my relationship with Man Yue," he glanced at Man Yu beside him and smiled freely. "If you 2 elders don't agree, I absolutely won't force it. It's the 21st century now. Love and marriage emphasize autonomy. Besides, my bringing harvesters isn't entirely helping for free. There'll still be a charge." Having said this, he paused as if keeping someone in suspense, looking at Zhao Guangfu, slowly uttering the most crucial final sentence. "Of course, only charging for diesel, call it half price. No matter what, Man Yu and I are at least friends." Li Haijun's words produced a surprising effect. Zhao Guangfu's face, which had been tightly rigid, suddenly relaxed. He muttered, "We'll discuss that later. Drink." Unprecedentedly, he actively raised his cup, gestured toward Li Haijun, tilted back his neck, and drained the cup in one gulp. Li Haijun truly was a businessman, possessing exceptional ability to read expressions. These words struck right at Zhao Guangfu's heart. First, according to Zhao Guangfu's consistent principles of conducting himself, he indeed didn't want to accept help from someone with whom he had neither friendship nor kinship for no reason. Moreover, this person was the partner his daughter had arbitrarily brought home. If he let him help this once, wouldn't that be equivalent to agreeing to this marriage? Second, the reason Zhao Guangfu had become one of Shenhuangzhou's top 1 or 2 farming experts and big households was because he'd toiled diligently and managed frugally his whole life. He had an abacus nearly falling apart from age and an equally dilapidated account book, both used when he served as production team accountant. All these years, not to mention daily household expenses, even every farming expenditure he'd calculated over and over on the abacus, recording accurately in that tattered account book. He'd rather split 1 fen into 2 fen to spend, never being extravagant. Every year harvesting wheat, other big households in the village all hired agricultural machinery teams. Although this saved considerable time, farming costs also increased considerably. Zhao Guangfu would rather hire short-term workers than hire agricultural machinery teams. After all, human labor was considerably cheaper than machines. So Li Haijun's statement about charging at half price precisely untied the knot that had troubled him these past days. This Duanyang festival lunch at the Zhao house ended before anyone realized. Little Cripple couldn't spare time even to wipe the grease from his mouth before driving the 3-wheeler to town. Cao Guichu busied herself clearing bowls and chopsticks. Manyue habitually picked up a broom from the door corner and swept the main room. A village stray dog had somehow snuck in. Fish bones and chicken bones on the floor were enough for it to feast on. The noon temperature was somewhat stifling. Cicadas in that large mulberry tree outside the door wouldn't stop their clamor. Due to the liquor's heat, Zhao Guangfu's forehead produced a layer of sweat beads. He moved his chair to the doorway. A draft blew between the front and back doors. Before long, his body cooled down. Li Haijun also moved a chair to sit opposite Zhao Guangfu and offered a soft Zhonghua cigarette. This time, Zhao Guangfu didn't refuse. He accepted the cigarette, first brought it under his nose to sniff, then put it in his mouth. Li Haijun naturally struck a match and lit it for him. Next, the 2 men chatted off and on. Although the topics weren't particularly congenial, the atmosphere was much more harmonious than at the table earlier. I remember when we first came to Shenhuangzhou to be sent down, the team specially allocated an experimental field for us several sent-down youth to make nutrition bowls, supposedly the latest cotton planting technology. If the experiment succeeded, it would be widely promoted throughout the brigade. Having said this, Li Haijun suddenly asked, "Uncle, do people still make nutrition bowls for planting cotton now?" Zhao Guangfu seemed also to recall something. "Oh, that thing was too labor-intensive and hard to tend. It's long out of fashion. Shenhuangzhou used to be a cotton production area, but on the road just now I saw far fewer cotton fields than before." Exactly. Cotton is harder to tend than wheat. Many pests and diseases. Pesticide costs alone are unbearable. Talking about crop-related topics, Zhao Guangfu's mouth became much more articulate. If cotton prices drop on top of that, in a year you can't even recover costs. Not just Shenhuangzhou, it's this situation nationwide now, Li Haijun said thoughtfully. For this cotton, the key is selecting good seeds. Seeds are crops' lifeline. Zhao Guangfu looked at him. "You're quite knowledgeable about farming matters." "Hardly. I've only recently started researching agricultural issues." Li Haijun smiled modestly. "Hasn't the state recently started emphasizing the 3 rural issues? I'm currently investing in an agricultural technology project. The core business is seed promotion." Zhao Guangfu asked offhandedly, "What seeds?" "A superior cotton variety that's pest-resistant and drought-tolerant," Li Haijun said. "This cotton requires neither weeding nor pesticides. Yields are much higher than ordinary varieties, and it saves considerable labor." Zhao Guangfu felt Li Haijun's words sounded somewhat far-fetched. He thought, no weeding, no pesticides, yet high yields? I've farmed my whole life and never heard of such good fortune. Li Haijun seemed to guess what he was thinking. This pest-resistant cotton was developed by America. It achieved huge success abroad and was only recently introduced to China. This time, coming to Shenhuangzhou, aside from accompanying Man Yu to visit you 2 elders, I'm mainly investigating cotton planting issues. He said this solemnly, then suddenly remembered something. "Right, uncle. Let me ask you about someone. Ma Kei's younger brother." "Why are you asking about him?" Zhao Guangfu asked alertly. "Oh, he was my student back when I taught at the Brigade Elementary School." As he spoke, Li Haijun stood up from his chair, pulled open his tightly buttoned collar as if feeling hot, and paced back and forth in the main room before stopping in front of Zhao Guangfu. This Ma La, you must not underestimate him. He was quite something back in the day. Even though he stumbled, even Deputy County Magistrate Ding is quite friendly with him. Hearing the words, Deputy County Magistrate, Zhao Guangfu didn't dare take things lightly anymore. He felt the man in front of him was somewhat unfathomable. Had he been a bit too excessively cold to him just now? I heard Ma La has returned to Shenhuangzhou. Where is he living? Before Zhao Guangfu had time to answer, his wife, Tao Guiqiu, having finished washing the dishes, walked out of the kitchen and chimed in. You're asking about Ma La? He lives by the embankment, in a house with a windmill. Zhao Guangfu furrowed his brow. He felt his wife was really talking too much. Chapter 17. Haijun's mouth was full of policy jargon. He sounded less like a small merchant and more like a fairly high-ranking leading cadre. That afternoon, Li Haijun had Man Yue lead the way to visit his former student Ma La. After all, he'd returned to the city over 20 years ago. Compared to when he was sent down, Shenhuangzhou's village appearance and topography had undergone tremendous changes. When he crossed through the village on that potholed small road, stepping unevenly deep and shallow toward the river, the houses and people's faces before him all made Li Haijun feel strange, to the point where he doubted whether he'd truly been sent down to this village before. As if to verify this, he asked Man Yu casually, Are you familiar with this person, Ma La? Man Yu said, When he taught high school at the town middle school, I was in middle school. Although he never taught us, he still counts as my teacher. The two talked as they walked. Before long, they reached the river embankment. Rounding a low willow grove, they saw that house with the windmill. The house sat at the embankment's foot, facing large expanses of rice paddies. The windmill on the roof turned slowly in the breeze. The windmill was wooden, treated with tung oil, scattering bronze-colored luster under sunlight. Seen from afar, like a large bird spreading wings ready to fly, crouching at the embankment's foot, appearing somewhat solitary and lonely. Ma La was weeding in the strawberry nursery behind the house, his hands covered with mud. Regarding Li Haijun's sudden visit, he was obviously very surprised. Without time to wash his hands, he busily invited the two inside, eyes glancing at Man Yu intimately following beside Li Haijun. Teacher Li, this is... Teacher Ma, don't you recognize me? Before Li Haijun could speak, Man Yue jumped in. I'm Man Yu. When you taught at the town middle school, I was in middle school. Oh, Man Yu, grown so big I didn't recognize you. Just recently, I heard Party Secretary Guo say you were coming home for Duanyang Festival. Ma La rubbed his hands while speaking, shifting his gaze toward Li Haijun, a trace of puzzlement crossing his face. Teacher Li, you two are... Li Haijun immediately understood his meaning. He pulled over one of Man Yu's hands and patted it lightly twice. Ha, Man Yue is my fiancé. This time I came to visit my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Man Yu embarrassedly pulled her hand free and chided Li Haijun with a glance. Old Li, don't talk nonsense. My parents haven't expressed their opinion yet. Taking advantage of Man Yu going outside alone to wander, after Ma La washed his hands and face, he came with Li Haijun to the second-floor study. Li Haijun looked at this study. Though messy, it had quite a scholarly atmosphere. He casually leafed through books and journals piled on the desk. Ho, all good books. This time returning to the countryside, do you want to be Tao Yuanming picking chrysanthemums by the eastern fence, gazing leisurely at the southern mountain? Or do you want to be a scholar? Teacher Li, are you praising me or criticizing me? Ma La waved his hands repeatedly. I'm just a released convict, farming a few mu of land, raising a few pigs. How could I be called a scholar? The two exchanged a few jokes before Li Haijun restrained his smile. I'm not just here to chat idly with you. I have serious business to discuss. On this midsummer afternoon, Li Haijun and Ma La chatted for a long time. To be precise, most of the time Li Haijun was talking while Ma La listened attentively. This actually fit their former teacher-student relationship. Li Haijun's tone of speech was indeed like a teacher expounding a viewpoint to a student, also like a revolutionary spreading revolutionary truth, constantly shifting from one topic to another at such speed that Ma La could barely keep up. He went from China joining the WTO to the 3 rural issues crisis, then to the convening of the 16th Party Congress. Things reverse when they reach an extreme. After hitting bottom, there's recovery. When crisis reaches a certain stage, new opportunities emerge. This is called dialectics. Li Haijun's mouth was full of policy jargon. He sounded less like a small merchant and more like a fairly high-ranking leading cadre. The more Ma La listened, the more confused he became, not knowing what this had to do with a small merchant. Li Haijun noticed the puzzlement in his eyes and said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm now mainly doing agricultural machinery and pest-resistant cotton promotion projects. On the surface, the countryside now is crisis-ridden, but opportunities are everywhere. For us entrepreneurs, the countryside is truly a vast world where much can be accomplished. It just depends on who moves fastest." The more Li Haijun talked, the more excited he became, pacing around the room, his mouth producing a new term. This is called capital going to the countryside. Since it's capital, naturally it speaks through strength. The more substantial the capital, the easier to accomplish things, big things. As if revealing a secret, Li Haijun suddenly lowered his voice. "Ma La, I'll tell you the truth. The seed promotion project I'm currently responsible for has major capital backing. Speaking of which, you may have heard of the person who helped me find this backing." Li Haijun paused as if keeping someone in suspense. Back then, among the Wuhan sent-down youth who came to Heikou Commune, there was a high-ranking cadre's son named Gu Zhaoyang who taught PE at Heikou Middle School for half a year. Gu Zhaoyang? Ma La felt this name was somewhat familiar but couldn't recall it for a moment. "No wonder. You were still young then," Li Haijun said. "But you surely still remember Murong Chu. Back then, she was your brother's dream lover." "Of course I remember," Ma La thought in a daze. His mind treasured all memories related to his brother. Among them, his brother and Murong Chu's fleeting romance always occupied a special place. He guarded it silently like a sacred object, rarely voluntarily mentioning it to others. Now, from Li Haijun's words, "dream lover," he heard a trace of sour, flippant meaning and couldn't help furrowing his brow. Gu Zhaoyang is Murong Chu's husband, though now he should be called ex-husband. They divorced long ago. Li Haijun didn't notice Ma La's expression and continued. "This Gu Zhaoyang is no ordinary person. His father is a veteran cadre of very high rank. Many current provincial leaders were trained by his father. Back then, Gu Zhaoyang relied on his father's connections. Less than half a year after being sent down to Heikou Commune, he was recommended for university. He's now chief representative for China at American Duke Company, specifically responsible for project investment, controlling billions in funding. Even provincial governors and mayors have to revolve around him. As for county magistrates, they probably can barely see his face. Of course, Chief Gu is quite sentimental. Although he was sent down for less than a year, he still regards Yanhe County as his second hometown. He injected a large sum into Chufeng Group, bringing our county's famous but actually loss-making, nearly bankrupt enterprise back to life. Know who was responsible for bringing in this investment? You've probably guessed, your old classmate Ding Yupeng, Deputy County Magistrate Ding. I heard he connected with Gu Zhaoyang through Vice Governor Han. Vice Governor Han used to be Gu Zhaoyang's father's subordinate. The connections are quite complex, right? No matter through what connections, Deputy Magistrate Ding has made a great contribution to our county's economic development. Speaking of Chief Gu, he's truly sentimental. The day before coming to inspect the Chufeng Group project, he asked Deputy Magistrate Ding to find me. I'm ashamed to say that back then, Gu Zhaoyang and I didn't have a deep friendship. Wuhan sent-down youth and local Yanhe sent-down youth didn't get along, frequently fighting. We met during one such brawl. That time, Chief Gu had Deputy Magistrate Ding send someone to find me and put me up at the county government guest house for a night. Thanks to Chief Gu's support, he proactively allowed me to participate in a global seed promotion project. How could my small company possibly have the opportunity to participate in a multinational corporation's project without Chief Gu? Li Haijun repeatedly called him Chief Gu, his face full of gratitude. However, in his rambling, branching narration, Ma La's mind gradually became clearer. Chief Gu says that after China joined the WTO, the countryside will become an enormous market. International capital has already begun focusing on this huge market. International capital. Just hearing it sounds frightening, right? Li Haijun paced around the room like a donkey grinding mill, breathing heavily from excitement. He suddenly stopped before Ma La, eyes gleaming brightly as he stared at him, smiling mysteriously. Do you know why I'm discussing such profound issues with you? Ma La looked at that slightly plump, fair face very close to his own, unable for a moment to find a suitable answer. But Li Haijun didn't seem to expect him to answer anything. Of course, not only because you were once my student, but also because you used to be an ambitious entrepreneur. This is called kindred spirits recognizing each other. He looked at his former student with admiring eyes. You always have this calm, composed expression, been this way since childhood. In this respect, you're different from your brother. You're much more introverted than him. I like this about you. I believe you'll still accomplish some extraordinary undertakings. He affectionately patted Ma La's shoulder. If you trust your teacher, let's work together. What do you say? Regarding Li Haijun's invitation, Ma La felt somewhat sudden. The other had talked endlessly in a cloud of fog, not touching the ground. By intuition, he felt he and this former teacher weren't the same kind of people. I may have to disappoint your good intentions, he thought blankly, troubled by not knowing how to respond. However, Li Haijun didn't seem to expect him to answer anything immediately. Perhaps that was just an offhand remark. Even he himself forgot after saying it. Business people were all like this. Many words couldn't be taken seriously. When mingling in the marketplace with Teacher Liu before, Ma La deeply understood this. Unexpectedly at 50, I'm returning to the vast world. Li Haijun didn't notice Ma La's thoughts at all, saying eagerly, Consider it a second going to the mountains and countryside. However, this time I'm not here to accept re-education, but to bring the latest scientific and technological achievements and international capital to aid poor and lower-middle peasants. Having said what, he considered humorous. Li Haijun laughed heartily. He licked his dry lips, only then realizing he'd only talked without drinking a mouthful of water. He said in a teasing tone, Ma La, when a guest comes, why don't you even make tea? Look at me. Only focused on listening to you talk, I forgot all about this. Ma La felt somewhat embarrassed and quickly got up to make tea. However, I don't have any good tea here. Forget it. I don't expect you to have good tea. A cup of plain water is fine. Li Haijun waved his hand magnanimously, saying somewhat boastfully, One day when you come to the county seat, I'll accompany you to slowly savor tea. My house has all kinds of good tea. Longjing, Tiguanyin, Pu'er, everything you could want. I even have a tea set from Jingdezhen. Before long, Ma La brought up a cup of plain water from downstairs. Li Haijun was truly thirsty and drained most of the cup in one gulp. He glanced at the messy room and asked concernedly, You haven't started a family yet, right? Such a big house without a woman. How can that work? Want me to help you find a wife in the city? I know quite a few pretty girls. Otherwise, how would I have found Man Yu? Li Haijun spoke very seriously, not at all jokingly, but Ma La smiled faintly. Thank you. All these years I've gotten used to living alone. Li Haijun looked at Ma La, as if wanting to discern from his face whether what he'd just said was truth or falsehood. Ma La, by rights, you're someone who's seen great storms, but you, a post-60s generation person regarding family and life, aren't as open-minded as I, a post-50s person. Ma La felt Li Haijun's sigh was somewhat affected, not quite matching his age. His mouth moved as if wanting to explain something in his defense. Just then, Man Yu returned. As soon as she entered, she said as if reporting good news, Teacher Ma, I just saw an orchard by the river. Couldn't tell if they were peach or orange trees. Did you plant those? Those are kiwis, Ma La said. Seeing Man Yu's forehead glisten with fine sweat, he asked, "Would you like some water?" Man Yu glanced at Li Haijun. "No need. Old Li finished chatting. Shall we go home?" Li Haijun didn't answer but picked up Man Yu's earlier topic, saying quite knowledgeably, "Kiwi is also called kiwi fruit. A few years ago, when I traveled to New Zealand, I saw huge expanses of kiwi fruit trees. This fruit has an extremely high health value. It's very popular in New Zealand, even more in demand than in China. Mala, you're truly worthy of being a former entrepreneur. Your investment vision is absolutely forward-looking." Having said this, he quite gentlemanly took Man Yu's hand and walked toward the door. Ma La saw Li Haijun and Man Yue all the way downstairs. When parting, he hesitated over whether to tell Li Haijun about meeting Tang Lina in Wuhan. But seeing the two's affectionate manner, he dismissed the thought. Chapter 18. In the city, he was just a migrant worker lighter than straw, about the same as an ant or a dog. After seeing off Li Haijun and Man Yue, Mala simply cooked a bowl of noodles to eat, returned to the upstairs study, and began reading. He was reading a book on soil science. Recently, after finishing farm work each day, Ma La used the remaining time to read, having studied agricultural specialty courses pretty much from the beginning to the end. This could be considered some compensation for not attending agricultural college back then. More importantly, he'd grown increasingly accustomed to the traditional literati lifestyle of farming and studying. Of course, he'd never been any literatus, but this didn't at all hinder the literati sensibility that had always existed in his bones. He'd already unknowingly bid farewell to his past, almost forgetting everything he'd experienced following Teacher Liu as a merchant. Probably precisely because of this, he lacked basic identification with Li Haijun's speech this afternoon. However, Li Haijun's visit still had a significant psychological impact on Ma La, to the point that he kept losing focus while reading. Although his eyes stared at the book, in his ears were Li Haijun's ambitious, impassioned words, plus that vaguely familiar Wuhan sent-down youth name Gu Zhaoyang, WTO multinational corporations, capital going to the countryside, second going to the countryside, seed promotion projects. This string of fresh or vaguely familiar terms flew around his ears like bees. It seemed capital, that giant beast with greed written in every pore, was beginning to turn its target toward the countryside, this as yet undeveloped virgin land, Ma La thought. What he hadn't anticipated was that leading that giant beast at the forefront were actually those sent-down youth who'd been to the vast world back then. The only difference was that before they came in the name of accepting re-education, now they carried the capital's banner. As for whether they were saviors coming to aid or bandits coming to plunder, only they knew clearly in their own hearts. Ma La's heart produced an almost instinctive vigilance. As a former entrepreneur, he knew how many people in China had become overnight millionaires in recent years by speculating in urban real estate, how many local governments maintained high-speed growth by selling off land. When real estate economics reached its end and urban land resources neared exhaustion, those people should turn their attention to the countryside. This was the capital's inevitable logic. Nobody could stop it. Especially for the countryside, all these years, the household responsibility system's small farming operational mode had turned farmers into a scattered rabble, completely lacking collective consciousness and self-protection ability. Facing a joint attack by capital and technology, they had absolutely no power to fight back. Of course, regarding the pest-resistant cotton promotion project Li Haijun mentioned, he still only half understood, not entirely clear. He couldn't immediately distinguish whether this was a heaven-sent opportunity that would truly benefit farmers or an unprecedented catastrophe bringing disaster. He needed to quickly figure out what these latest scientific products actually were. No matter what, he was now part of this land. Like a son, even if physically weak, he should make every effort to protect his aging, frail mother from harm. But exactly what method to use for protection, he didn't know either. Ma La's thoughts were like an unbridled wild horse walking freely in the wilderness. If not for the sudden knocking downstairs, he'd have truly forgotten where he was. The visitor was Gu Yu. Since returning from Guangdong, this former student has come to Ma La's place every few days, either to borrow books or discuss matters he considers quite urgent. This just past 30 young farmer still regarded Ma La as his teacher in his heart. Whenever encountering troublesome matters, he'd seek him out first rather than tell his wife, Fennel, as if without Ma La, he couldn't even walk. This made Fennel can't help feeling sour. You depend on Teacher Ma so much. Why not just move in and live with him? Gu Yu shot back at her. Jealous, are you? Let me tell you, if Teacher Ma hadn't returned to Shenhuangzhou, I wouldn't have stayed either. Hearing this, though Fennel's heart didn't feel good, she knew her husband spoke the truth. She understood the slight strangeness of Teacher Ma's in Gu Yu's heart. As a woman, Fennel initially didn't understand how her husband could have this strange dependence on a man. But over time, she gradually understood something and felt much relieved, even like Gu Yu developing a certain dependence and trust in Teacher Ma. When encountering puzzling matters without Gu Yu saying anything, she'd proactively remind him, "Go ask Teacher Ma and take him some long beans." She'd heard Gu Yu say Ma La's vegetable garden wasn't well tended. Sometimes he had to go to town to buy vegetables. His 3 daily meals often consisted of noodles to get by. No wonder men ultimately weren't as good at taking care of themselves as women. So whenever Gu Yu went to Ma La's place, Fennel would pick some fresh vegetables from the garden for him to bring along. "Gu Yu, the door isn't bolted. Come up yourself." Ma La walked out of the study, stood on the balcony, and waved affectionately downward. After a moment, along with a series of thumping footsteps, Gu Yu, wearing only an undershirt and shorts, flip-flops slapping, emerged from the stairway. Seeing Ma La standing at the door to greet him, he raised his voice. "Teacher Ma, you haven't slept yet? Anyway, I can't sleep. If I don't chat with you about this today, I won't be able to close my eyes all night." Ma La looked inquiringly at his former student. "What major matter has you so anxious?" Gu Yu raised the copy of Rural New Report in his hand. "You'd better first read this news item in the paper." This newspaper was one that Ma La subscribed to. The rural mail carrier always delivered to the village office. Gu Yu's house was near the village office. Every time he brought the newspaper back for Ma La, he'd always read through it first. Taking the newspaper from Gu Yu's hand, he entered the study and moved close to the somewhat dim electric light. Following Gu Yu's direction, he saw a news report. Lishu County farmers' professional cooperatives spring up like bamboo shoots after rain. Look, one county established over 100 farmers' professional cooperatives, but here we're still every household for itself. Really backward. Gu Yu pointed at the news item, plopped down on a stool by the desk, and made tusk-tusk sounds of admiration and long sighs. Ma La held the newspaper, reading that brief news item 3 times over, as if afraid of missing even one character or punctuation mark. After finishing, he seemed to be pondering something. For a long while, he didn't speak. Gu Yu couldn't wait, urging, "Teacher Ma, what do you think about this news item? Say something." Ma La asked back, "You tell me. What do you think?" Gu Yu scratched his messy hair, saying with difficulty, "Aside from learning from them, what else can we do? Crops grown through hard work. We can only wait for those middleman dealers to come buy them. We don't even have the qualification to bargain. In the end, we can't even earn back our costs. If things continue this way, which young person will be willing to stay home and farm?" "Gu Yu, you've hit the nail on the head." A trace of a smile appeared at Ma La's lips. He set the newspaper on the desk, saying thoughtfully, "At root, if farmers want to resist market risks and grasp survival initiative, the only way out is to reorganize like Lishu County farmers." He pulled a yellowed copy of Selected Works of Mao Zedong from the bookshelf. In Volume 5 of the Selected Works, there's an article, "Get Organized," specifically discussing agricultural cooperatives. Of course, the agricultural cooperatives here aren't completely the same thing as today's professional cooperatives, but essentially, they're connected. Gu Yu took the book over, casually flipping a few pages, then looked up at Ma La, puzzled. Teacher Ma, have you been thinking about cooperatives already? I'm not quite sure. After all, today's cooperatives are a new phenomenon. Ma La smiled at Gu Yu. However, Gu Yu, your attitude today has firmed up my thinking. Teacher Ma, what exactly are you thinking? It's not mature yet. Ma La smiled slightly. When I've thought it through more clearly, I'll tell you. From Ma La's tone, Gu Yu sensed he must be thinking about something important. He even already guessed what. Someone like Teacher Ma will accomplish something remarkable sooner or later. Gu Yu increasingly firmly believed this. After a while, Gu Yu seemed to remember something and changed the subject. Just now, I saw Man Yu and a man wandering around the village, looking quite intimate. Really? Ma La lightly said. Oh, seeing Gu Yu's expression suddenly becomes somewhat melancholy. Only then did he vaguely recall Gu Yu and Man Yu's past romance. He reached out to pat Gu Yu's shoulder, sighed, and said, After all these years, you still haven't forgotten Man Yu. Obviously, she and that man have an unusual relationship, Gu Yu murmured, but their age difference is too great. Ma La silently looked at Gu Yu without making a sound. He seemed to discover for the first time that his student was such a deeply devoted person. But Man Yue is over 30, Gu Yu said to himself. She really should start a family. That evening, Gu Yu stayed at Ma La's place until very late. When he went home, it was almost midnight. The children were long asleep, but Fennel hadn't slept yet. Usually, when he returned late from chatting at Ma La's, Fennel would already be asleep. Why was she waiting up for him tonight? Gu Yu felt somewhat puzzled. He took off his clothes and was about to lie down when Fennel tugged his arm, asking in a low but pressing voice, Where did you go? Coming back so late? Gu Yu felt completely confused. What kind of question is that? Aside from going to Teacher Ma's, where else would I go? I heard Zhao Man Yu came back, and someone in the village saw her arm in arm with a man wandering in the fields. Fennel's tone was somewhat like interrogating a criminal. You didn't go meet Man Yu in the fields? Hearing this, Gu Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Didn't you even ask how old that man was before wildly suspecting? Do you think I'm still in middle school? Fennel seemed choked on something, suddenly speechless. Regarding his wife's inexplicable jealousy, though Gu Yu felt somewhat angry, he was, in his heart, particularly pleased. That hazy romance between him and Man Yu had been over for more than 10 years. He himself had almost completely forgotten it. This evening's distant glimpse at the village entrance had only vaguely stirred up those feelings at the bottom of his heart. But that was no more than wisps of cooking smoke before and behind the village, a breeze, and it vanished without a trace. He hadn't expected Fennel to still be jealous about this. It seemed this woman truly valued him from the bottom of her heart. If in the city, he was just a migrant worker, lighter than straw, about the same as an ant or a dog. Even if dead, nobody would spare him a glance. Only in Fennel's eyes was he a man of substance. This gave him some sense of human dignity. This human dignity could only be obtained on this land that raised him. Gu Yu's heart became tender. He subconsciously embraced Fennel's bare arm. But by this time, Fennel had already fallen asleep, her head slightly tilted, leaning against his chest, emitting light snoring sounds. Along with the children's even breathing, the room was like performing a concert. Gu Yu listened intently, feeling an affection he'd never experienced before. Suddenly, he heard a voice sounding in his mind. If you can't let your wife and children live decent lives, what kind of man are you? In his mind, tonight's extensive conversation with Teacher Ma floated. Yes, even for his wife and children, he should follow Teacher Ma and do something together. Make a big splash. Thinking this, Gu Yu felt his body like a fully inflated ball, gradually filling with strength. Chapter 19. These people had rarely interacted with Ma La before, only knowing he'd accomplished big things outside and was someone who'd seen the world. Around 2003, in China's vast northeast and North China countryside, hundreds and thousands of variously named farmers' professional cooperatives appeared. This was the first time since the early 1980s dissolution of people's communes that Chinese countryside, after nearly 20 years of household responsibility system, small farming production, organized again. Through this new type of cooperative organization, individual farming households formed a united force, helping each other in solidarity, jointly resisting risks, and enhancing the agricultural product's negotiating ability in market transactions. Soon, this cooperative whirlwind spread and extended into southeastern and urban peripheral, economically developed rural areas, gaining vigorous, flourishing momentum. After the 16th Party Congress, to encourage, support, and regulate the healthy development of farmers' professional cooperatives, the state issued a series of policies and regulations. From then on, new-type farmers' professional cooperatives began to be further promoted throughout the nation's countryside. Also in this year, not long after the wheat harvest, Shenhuangzhou established its first agricultural planting and sales professional cooperative. The leaders were Ma La and his student Gu Yu. The cooperative's scale was very small, altogether just 5 farming households. The other 3 were all half households. On the day the cooperative was established, everyone gathered at Ma La's house with the windmill for a meeting. They reviewed and passed the cooperative charter, voting to elect Ma La as board chairman and Gu Yu as vice chairman. On this sweltering morning, Ma La's house, usually cold and quiet, rarely visited, became uncommonly lively. Ma La sat beside the table where he normally ate, a teacup before him. The others sat around the table like family. Although aside from Gu Yu, the other members were all elderly and women, Chairman-elect Ma La still delivered an inaugural speech in proper form. Starting today, our cooperative is officially established. I've been thinking, the cooperative still needs to take a formal name. Right now, although Shenhuangzhou only has our one cooperative, it's still a new phenomenon, but who knows, soon a second, third, and many more may spring up. By then, nobody will be able to tell who's who. I thought of a name. Call it Tongxin Cooperative, which means working together in solidarity and harmony. What does everyone think? Good! This name is good. The purpose of establishing our cooperative is to unite everyone, work together in solidarity for common prosperity. Gu Yu called out, "Good!" twice, put down his ballpoint pen, and led the applause. Just now, while Ma La was speaking, he'd been busy taking notes. I'm planning to formulate a 3-year development plan for the cooperative. Of course, this plan isn't written yet and still needs everyone's input. Before Ma La finished, Fennel asked curiously, "The state makes 5-year plans. Why are we only making 3 years?" Regarding the cooperative matter, Fennel had always strongly supported Gu Yu. According to regulations, each farming household was required to send only one person to participate, but Fennel proactively proposed attending the meeting to show support for the cooperative. Gu Yu didn't stop her. After all, the cooperative had few members, one more person made it livelier. "We need to take bigger steps and develop faster." Ma La paused slightly, answering concisely and confidently. "Teacher Ma, be more specific. How can we take even bigger steps than the state?" asked a middle-aged woman with a dark complexion, somewhat impatiently. Her surname was Hu. Villagers usually called her Sister Hu. Sister Hu's husband had died several years ago, falling from over 10 stories high at a city construction site, leaving her alone with 2 children, supporting the family by farming. Life was very difficult. "Don't be impatient. Let Teacher Ma speak slowly." Fennel, sitting beside her, whispered, "Teacher Ma managed a big enterprise. Managing us few people. Isn't that a piece of cake?" Ma La's ears were sharp. Hearing Fennel's words, he said with a chuckle, "I'm not managing everyone either. In a cooperative, everyone still does their own work. I just help everyone come up with ideas, find solutions together when there are difficulties." "Right. Now our country has joined the WTO. Domestic and foreign markets are all controlled by those big companies. All agricultural product pricing power is in their hands." Gu Yu expounded in his capacity as vice chairman. "If we farmers still work as individual households like this, we can only be slaughtered at will. Life will get tighter and tighter." Recently, Gu Yu had read quite a few books and periodicals. When he spoke, his mouth was full of new terminology. Gu Yu is right. Ma La approvingly glanced at his student and capable assistant. After establishing the cooperative, we can't be like before, just burying our heads in farming, not caring whether products sell well or fetch good prices. Rather, from what agricultural products to plant, how to improve product quality and output, to through what channels to sell them, all must be scientifically planned after serious, detailed market research. La, don't speak so complicatedly. We don't understand. An old man couldn't hold back. Just tell us directly what crops we'll plant from now on. Uncle Cow, you're even more impatient than Fennel. Gu Yu laughed. Didn't Teacher Ma just say, making plans requires serious, detailed market research? Uncle Cow was named Chao Guangjin, a short old man in his 50s who suffered from chronic rhinitis and constantly had to sniffle. Cao Guangjin's son and daughter-in-law both worked in the city. At home, only he and his wife farmed 5 or 6 mu of land. Hearing Gu Yu's words, he embarrassedly touched his bald head. I just heard Ma La say steps need to be bigger. Before he finished, everyone present laughed heartily. Gu Yu, don't interrupt people's words, Ma La reminded. Today is the cooperative's founding day. Everyone can say whatever they want. Let's pool our wisdom. These people had rarely interacted with Ma La before, only knowing he'd accomplished big things outside and was someone who'd seen the world. Some were even entering this house with the windmill for the first time. They joined the cooperative because of the tireless encouragement from the Gu Yu and Fennel couple. Until today, they only half understood what exactly a cooperative was. Now, hearing Ma La's words, their original restraint unknowingly disappeared. Teacher Ma, that you've pulled us several together to establish this cooperative shows you think highly of us, Sister Hu said, as if making a statement. As long as I can support 2 children through school by farming, however you have us farm in the future, we'll all listen to you, the chairman. Sister Hu, that's the principle, but you can't put it that way. Gu Yu couldn't help interrupting her again. The charter states clearly, our cooperative practices democratic management. Major matters must be voted on to pass. What's democracy? I only know that whether in the city or the countryside, as long as people have knowledge and ability, they live better than others. Sister Hu looked at Ma La with trusting eyes. Someone as knowledgeable and capable as Teacher Ma, not only living well himself but willing to lead us to live well. If we don't listen to him, who should we listen to? That's the principle, but... Gu Yu still wanted to reason with her further, but Ma La stopped him. Since everyone trusts me so much, once Gu Yu and I discuss it more and draft the 3-year plan, we'll hold another meeting to discuss it. Nothing else to say. Whatever you say, goes. Cao Guangjin said hesitantly, It's just this cooperative membership fee. La, you know my family's situation. I'm afraid I can't come up with it right away. This membership fee is the cooperative's development fund. The wool comes from the sheep. Pooling it together is all for everyone's benefit, Gu Yu explained. Seeing Cao Guangjin seem to have concerns, he added loudly, I guarantee everyone here. Tomorrow I'll deposit the money in the cooperative's account. Cao Guangjin sniffled and gave Gu Yu an annoyed look, somewhat displeased. You and Fennel are young and strong. How can we compare with you? Oh, this is easy to handle. Whichever household has difficulties, the membership fee can wait. Pay when finances are more comfortable, Ma La said cheerfully. Anyway, I still have some savings. I'm prepared to donate 10,000 yuan as the cooperative's development fund. Teacher Ma, how can we feel right about this? Having you alone put up money, Sister Hu said apologetically. Don't worry. Even if I have to borrow money, I'll pay the membership fee. Everyone heard that, right? For the cooperative's sake, Teacher Ma is emptying his own family's bottom. Gu Yu led the applause. The others hesitated a moment, then began clapping as well. After the meeting ended, everyone gradually went home. Only Gu Yu stayed behind. He wanted to discuss the cooperative's next steps with Ma La. By this time, it was noon. Gu Yu's stomach started rumbling. He put down his ballpoint pen and said, Teacher Ma, I only had a bowl of congee this morning. I'm already starving. Should I go home to eat lunch, then come back? Just eat something with me. Saves you going back and forth, wasting time, Ma La said, displaying an attitude of seizing every moment. What good food do you have here? Won't it just be noodles again? Gu Yu pursed his lips, deliberately making a bitter face. You eat noodles every day. Don't you get tired of it? I couldn't get used to eating noodles before either. During those years at the labor farm, the cafeteria served noodles and steamed buns 3 meals a day. My appetite was completely reformed. Hearing Ma La's words, Gu Yu momentarily didn't know what to say. After a stunned moment, he muttered, It would be good if you had a woman here to cook. But Ma La acted as if he hadn't heard, getting up to go to the kitchen to cook. In less than a quarter hour, 2 large bowls of noodle soup came out, each bowl topped with an egg. The 2 men ate noodles while continuing to discuss cooperative matters, accompanied by a bottle of bean paste. The weather was very hot, to the point where even across the embankment they could hear cicadas in the riverside woods, shrilling, hot, hot, hot. Gu Yu also felt unbearably hot. Before finishing 1 bowl of noodles, his face and neck were drenched in sweat. He had to stop using chopsticks and grab a palm leaf fan to vigorously fan himself. Ma La was more heat-resistant. Although it was also covered in sweat beads, it didn't affect his eating at all. In a moment, a large bowl of noodles went down his gullet. Only after putting down the bowl did he take a towel from the chair back to wipe his sweat. Teacher Ma, you said our cooperative's steps should be bigger than the state's. What exactly do you mean? While fanning away, Gu Yu discussed the 3-year plan with Ma La. Give me the bottom line, otherwise my heart keeps hanging. Specifically speaking, by the 3rd year, each family's income should strive to quadruple. Gu Yu looked at Ma La half-believingly, eyes widening. My heavens, quadruple? What, don't believe it? Seeing his exaggerated expression, Ma La couldn't help laughing. Don't believe me, or don't believe the members. I believe you, Teacher Ma. Otherwise, I wouldn't have joined you in establishing the cooperative, Gu Yu said. But even if you alone are capable, if others can't put in effort, it's still useless. The cooperative just established, and you're already talking defeatist? Ma La said seriously. Who can't put in effort? Is it Old Cow, Sister Who, or you and Fennel? With this question from Ma La, Gu Yu hemmed and hawed, unable to answer. I know what you're thinking. Ma La seemed to see through Gu Yu's thoughts, hitting the nail on the head. You think those few aren't elderly, then they're women. No quality, no labor power. You look down on them, right? That's just how it is, Gu Yu admitted honestly. They're all the village's difficult households. Slightly better off farming households have no interest in joining the cooperative either. There's nothing strange about that. The cooperative charter clearly states that joining and leaving are voluntary. Have you thought about this? Although these members' conditions are a bit worse, they need help precisely because of this. The cooperative was established precisely for these farming households needing help. We must lead everyone to find a path of mutual assistance and benefit. Otherwise, we might as well each mind our own business. Why look for so much trouble? Ma La's words had strong logic. Gu Yu felt every sentence hit him right in the heart. He admitted he'd still been too impatient, doing things often based on momentary enthusiasm, lacking Teacher Ma's steady, rational, pragmatic style. This was precisely what he'd always admired about Ma La from his heart, also the reason he'd determined to stay in Shenhuangzhou. He felt Ma La possessed a peculiar charm. It was precisely this charm that had deeply attracted and fascinated him since his middle school days, making him willing to follow devotedly to this day. Naturally, Ma La also felt from Gu Yu's every word and deed his trust in himself. He liked this student less than 10 years younger. He even thought, if Gu Yu didn't frequently read books and newspapers with him these days, chatting about everything, conversations lasting half the night, how lonely he'd be. More than likely, he wouldn't have thought of organizing any cooperative either. In Ma La's heart, he no longer just regarded Gu Yu as his student, but as a friend, a like-minded friend. This relationship involuntarily reminded him of the intimate friendship he had once shared with Teacher Liu. Similarly, the teacher and student are about 10 years apart in age. People, at any time, they can't be without friends. A person lonely in life cannot be lonely inside. Loneliness is a terrible corrosive agent. Soaked in it too long, the soul gradually rusts, becoming decadent. So people must find companions, like books, like friends. With these two things, one could possibly pull oneself together again, connecting one's own life with more people's lives. That way, one would truly escape loneliness. Ma La knew that to attract and recruit more people to join, in the past days, Gu Yu and his wife Fennel had gone door to door in the village propagandizing and mobilizing. Needless to say, about the hard work, they'd also received quite a bit of cold words. Seemingly worried about dampening Gu Yu's enthusiasm, he changed his tone. All things are difficult at the beginning. For the cooperative, what's most important now is finding accurate targets, doing things one by one, step by step. After Ma La's patient guidance, Gu Yu became invigorated again. He put down his palm fan and straightened his back. "Teacher Ma, just tell me, what should we do next?" Ma La thought for a moment and raised one finger. "First, turn several households' dry fields into paddy fields, striving to plant one season of rice this year. As for seeds, we'll go directly to Changsha to purchase the latest hybrid late rice, starting to plant from next year." "You're saying from now on we won't plant cotton but all switch to rice?" "Right. To achieve tripling income in 3 years, this is a crucial step," Ma La said in a definite tone. "Cotton and wheat prices are all determined by national and even international markets. North and South prices are about the same. Farming households have no pricing power. Rice is different. Different types of rice have very different prices. You've been to big supermarkets in the city, right? The rice there is divided into different grades. Some prices differ by more than 10 times. If we can plant varieties that are both tasty and have good texture, we can sell them at much higher prices than now." Gu Yu had indeed seen in Guangdong supermarkets that kind of rice with beautiful packaging and shocking prices, but he still felt somewhat doubtful. What kind of rice would be worth such high prices? Ma La obviously already had a plan. "This rice is called organic rice. I've read quite a bit about this. Now, wealthy people in cities don't eat rice grown with chemical fertilizers and pesticides. They all like eating rice grown with organic fertilizer. They call it organic rice." "Can grain be grown now without chemical fertilizer?" Gu Yu was half believing. "Why not? Before, didn't our countryside all plant crops using farmyard manure? That is, organic fertilizer." Seeing Gu Yu still didn't quite understand, Ma La turned and went upstairs to the study. When he came down, he held a stack of books and periodicals. "Look, everything I just said comes from these books and journals. Take them home and read them carefully, then we'll discuss together specific measures for switching to organic rice." The two talked a while longer before Gu Yu left, holding that stack of books. When leaving, he remembered something else. "Teacher Ma, last time I saw in your study a copy of The Ordinary World. Could you lend it to me?" Ma La said, puzzled. "Didn't you read this novel before?" "Yes. When I was working in Guangdong, I even bought a copy, but after a coworker borrowed it, it never came back." But when Ma La came down from the study, aside from The Ordinary World, he brought Gu Yu another book, The Builders. "I read this novel many times when I was young. You'd better read it too." Gu Yu took the book and cheerfully said, "Okay." He felt Ma La's tone was like back in school when assigning him homework. He liked this teacher-student feeling, similar to that of brothers or master and apprentice. The afternoon sunlight was too intense. The whole world seemed on fire, bright and dazzling. Ma La stood at the door, watching Gu Yu holding that stack of books walk toward the village along the embankment. He watched this studious, thoughtful young man walk into the distance until he completely disappeared from view. Ma La turned back, about to re-enter the house, when he heard a dog barking behind him. He turned to look and saw a commune member emerge from somewhere, tail raised, baring teeth and barking viciously at him. He hadn't seen commune member in quite a while. He reached out affectionately, wanting to pet it, but commune member backed up a step, staring at him vigilantly, as if not recognizing him anymore. Just then, Big Bowl Uncle came out from the other side of the house, hands behind his back, saying to Ma La, "How about that? Commune member doesn't even recognize you anymore, right?" Ma La quickly invited Big Bowl Uncle inside. "It's you! In this scorching heat, come inside quickly. I thought you'd forgotten about me." Big Bowl Uncle's voice carried a trace of mocking flavor. Having been busy with cooperative matters, Ma La hadn't been to Big Bowl Uncle's place in quite a while. Previously, he'd go to Big Bowl Uncle's place every few days. "Let me pour you a bowl of cold water," Ma La said, about to go to the kitchen to get water for Big Bowl Uncle, but Big Bowl Uncle stopped him. "No need, busy man. I just came to ask you something." "What is it, Big Bowl Uncle? Just tell me." "You, La, making such a big commotion without telling me. Do you still have your Big Bowl Uncle in your eyes?" Big Bowl Uncle had an accusatory tone. "You tell me. What's this cooperative of yours all about?" Ma La didn't understand Big Bowl Uncle's meaning and said hesitantly, "Well, even someone as hard up as Cao Guangjin, you let him join the cooperative but left me aside. Think I'm too old?" Big Bowl Uncle said huffily, his beard twitching up and down. So that's what this was about. After Ma La understood, he said with an apologetic smile, "It's like this. I didn't have confidence about this matter, so I didn't dare disturb you, old man. Plus, you weren't feeling well recently." "I wasn't feeling well, so did you help me feed those 2 pigs?" Big Bowl Uncle said, unconvinced. "La, I understand cooperatives better than you. When Shen Huangzhou's first cooperative was established back then, I was among the first to help start it. The county even gave me a big certificate." That cooperative then, and our cooperative now, aren't the same thing. Ma La wanted to explain carefully, but Big Bowl Uncle waved his hand confidently. "What's different? I just know. All things in this world change but remain fundamentally the same. Isn't it just helping each other out? Not much different from when we organized mutual aid groups." Ma La admitted Big Bowl Uncle's words weren't wrong, so he didn't explain further. "I came today to apply to join your cooperative, Chairman," Big Bowl Uncle said like a child, not at all admitting he was old, patting his chest. "I won't compare other things with Cao Guangjin, just compare raising pigs. In what year were his family's pigs as big as mine? Thinking back, when I was pig farm director in the brigade, which pig didn't grow over 100 jin?" Ma La felt somewhat between laughter and tears, but in his heart, he couldn't help feeling happy. The cooperative had just been established, and someone was already scrambling to join. Wasn't this a good thing? However, Big Bowl Uncle was over 70, a bit old. His son Guo Dongsheng, the party secretary, wouldn't agree either. Of course, with Big Bowl Uncle's experience and qualifications, serving as an advisor to the cooperative would be more than adequate. Thinking this, the words came out. "Big Bowl Uncle, I was just thinking of specifically asking your advice in a few days. How about you be our advisor?" Hearing this, Big Bowl Uncle's earlier anger completely dissipated. "Advisor or not, doesn't matter. Just count me as one of your cooperative's people. Speaking of farming matters, I'm more skilled than Cao Guangjin. Back in the production team, which task wasn't I stronger at than him? If you don't believe me, go ask Zhao Guangfu, Zhao Calculator." Seeing Big Bowl Uncle's childishly earnest manner, Ma La couldn't help laughing heartily. He hadn't laughed so happily in a long time. That night, Ma La couldn't fall asleep no matter what. His mind was full of scenes from the day spent establishing the cooperative. Later, he got up and walked outside, coming to the rooftop terrace. All around was silent. The village in the distance was pitch black, like a giant ship. Someone's dog let out a few barking sounds. The windmill on the roof turned slowly in the night breeze, creaking like a cheerful song. All this further accentuated the night's profundity. Ma La, who'd returned to Shenhuangzhou for over 2 years, had never felt as excited and unable to calm down as today. He couldn't explain why he felt this way, just as he similarly couldn't immediately explain clearly why he'd worked with Gu Yu to organize and establish a cooperative. Later, Ma La returned to his room and picked up a copy of Anna Karenina from beside his pillow. Soon, he was attracted by a passage. Levin clearly realized for the first time that to transform such boring, empty, unnatural bachelor life into this diligent, pure, collective, beautiful life, the key lay entirely in oneself. Ma La casually took a ballpoint pen and marked this passage. Diligent, pure, collective. He recited these words, letting the final sound fall on the two characters, collective, chewing carefully. No matter what, as a man already past 40, he should live according to his own will. Thinking this, Ma La raised his head, a resolute expression appearing on his face. He took a deep breath. The night was already very deep. The rumbling sound of ships passing on the river seemed to come from the distant horizon, yet also close at hand. What a vast yet full night,